Gotcha. I mean, I have it up, like, ready to put on the screen, but no, I didn't, like, actually move it. Yeah. All right, yeah.
Reminder, for me.
Yeah.
New gray licenses, they are
Those are the easiest ones. You can approve those,
okay.
and then they go do some work at someone's house. I don't think there's anything that needs a hearing, which is amazing.
Well, no, there's a new history.
No, that doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't.
All right. I gotta learn what the difference.
It's like a taxi, but not a taxi. It's like a fancy taxi. I don't. You have to make. They can't have a meter.
Oh.
Yeah. It's on there now, but you can stay if you want to withdraw it, or you can just say just place it on file or whatever. Yeah, 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 right. It's going on there now.
Funny, I put in like 3 days before all this happened.
Yeah, it was actually before this. You put that one in so early.
Yeah.
And then, you see, I was like, I should have said something beforehand, but it didn't even register for me because I just had everything pull in. I mean, on hers it worked to open the drawer, but I don't know why it was sitting there. Yeah, I don't know who had it that thought they would leave it behind. Be like, I know how to get into your drawer. I don't know. I'm ready. Yeah? Let's hit it.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'll call this meeting of the Somerville City Council to order, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation. And please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website, and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor Davis.
Here.
Councillor Scott.
Here.
Councillor Strezzo.
Present.
Councillor Klingon.
Present.
Councillor Wilson.
Present.
Councillor Burnley.
Present.
Councillor Gomez-Mocad.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
Councillor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
With all councillors present, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Clerk. Pursuant to our Rule 32, let it be known that this City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We begin our meetings with a moment of silence. Is there anyone that the Council wishes to remember tonight? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would invite the council and all of Somerville to keep in their minds tonight the family of Albert F. Argenziano, who passed away on June 3rd. I'm sure you all will recognize the name. From my neighborhood school, Dr. Argenziano was the superintendent here from, I believe, 1993 to 2005. Had just a long and illustrious career in education, and even after he retired from being Somerville superintendent in 2005, he actually went back to it and helped out Beverly as an interim superintendent for them. So, you know, the impact he's had on Somerville's youth is basically immeasurable, and I'm glad we have a building named after him. So I just ask that we note his passing respectfully.
The council will sign on to that, of course. Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
On May 22nd, it was the one-year anniversary of Steph Amon passing away, and I made a promise that we would always remember him, especially when he sent me his last text, oh boy, a week before he passed away. He said, "You were amazing last night, and we're so blessed to have you fighting for us." And in that spirit, I would like us to remember something, Steph Amon, something that happened that was terrible to him. And we're starting an election year, again, an election process. And we should always look back. This is not to blame, but to improve ourselves, to understand our biases. And his words were, you know, after what happened, we all know what it was. It was a gut punch, Amon said. It really hurt. Usually when you hear stories like this, it happened in the South, Texas, Alabama, or Florida. This happened right in my backyard. It happened to me. That really hurt because of all the service I've done for my community. He was truly, he was born out of the community. He was a leader. I had someone once say to me, well, you know, his grammar's not very good. And I think we forgot at that. That was a very biased statement. Because we forgot at that time when I saw Steph interacting, talking in Haitian Creole to the community, he had the heart and soul of the community, I think. So as we think of public service, I remind us to think about what it is to speak to the community, what to think of what we think are the stereotypes of power and leadership, and break those stereotypes and try to be more inclusive. And for that, Steph, I owe you that for the words you tell me, and I will always remember her every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to also recognize Dr. Argenziano, who was the superintendent when I went through the Somerville school system. Got to meet him. He would not have remembered me because I was one of thousands of kids who passed through the school. But as a reckless youth, he was a positive impact on my life and helped me graduate from high school on time. And he was also just a good guy. He's from the city. He was from the streets. He was a working class guy who rose up through the education ranks and got the highest job in the city in education. And also his son worked for the city of Somerville in the communications department and also taught me how to do camera work and video and things like this. So he had a very positive impact on my life, and I'd like to remember him as well. I also want to acknowledge Jim Capano, who was a longtime Somerville resident, Somerville Democratic Committee member for many years, grew up in the West End and was literally displaced. We talk about displacement. The whole neighborhood was torn down, and he was gentrified essentially into Somerville back when people didn't want to live in the city. And he always carried the torch for the West End, and he also continued to fight in Somerville for the things that he believed in. So I'll miss him as well.
Thank you. I see the council would like to sign on to that as well. Thank you. All right, will everyone in the chamber who's able, please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you all. You may be seated. All right, colleagues. So we're going to start tonight in order with our citation and our grants of location permits, and then we have a number of items to take out of order. Obviously, on tonight's agenda, there are many items regarding the Winter Hill School, and we're going to have a statement from Mayor Ballantyne, and I know a number of her staff are going to be here to take questions if there are some. And before we do that, we're going to take up a financial request from the Arts Council. And after that, we have some financial items for immediate consideration and an item from Councillor Strezzo, 4.8, condemning anti-Semitism. And I see that we have members of the public here for that as well, so thank you and welcome. So with that, let's proceed with our citation, please.
The next item is item 1.3, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 11th, 2023. Item 2.1 is a citation by Councillor Ewan Kempen commending John Gullidge for his actions on May 19th, 2023 during a medical incident at Veterans Memorial Rink.
Councillor Ewan Kempen.
Thank you very much, Madam President.
Yes.
Madam President, it is really an honor to be here to make this citation to the firefighter Gullidge. I want to read something that was submitted by Captain Gregory Grant, describing the situation. On the night of May 19, 2023, firefighter Gullidge in a hockey game at the Veterans Memorial Rink when one of the players on the ice had a significant medical emergency and was unresponsive. Firefighters Gullidge and Gallo obtained an on-site AED and attached the device to the patient. They then performed chest compressions until the arrival of Tower 1. Upon arrival, firefighter Gullidge updated the crew with a detailed assessment of the moments before the incident and the care given. The crew of Tower 1 and crews from Cataldo Ambulance continued care and were able to stabilize the patient. He was transported to the Massachusetts General Hospital, where he was listed in stable condition. CPR, especially if administered immediately after cardiac arrest, significantly increases the person's chances of survival. I believe the expeditious actions of Somerville firefighter John Gullidge and Danvers firefighter James Gallo had a resounding effect on the outcome of this incident. So we are honored to be joined tonight by firefighter Gullidge, and I also want to say we're joined by State Senator Pat Jalen, who I believe has an item from the state as well in recognition of this act of heroism. So it is my honor to present this citation to Mr. Gullidge, and thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I can't help but speak on this item. John, I think we finally have reached a point in Somerville where I can acknowledge that we're friends without fear of any reprisals. So I grew up with John. I was my brother Mark's friend and my friend as well. And when I heard this story about what happened, I was not surprised at all. I was like, this is just another day in the life of John Gullidge. I was a little surprised it didn't even happen when he was on duty, but it doesn't surprise me because when he became a firefighter, which was his lifelong dream to become a firefighter, I said to people that this is a guy who's going to put his life on the line for anybody. Saved my brother from a whitewater rafting incident a few years back, saved my brother from a really bad friend in the Cape, just came to pick him up, things like that. Not life-saving, but always willing to put others before himself, and I just want to thank you. I'm glad to see you. I haven't seen you for a while because you got two lovely girls there now. And I just think about how, you know, a lot of our friends aren't around anymore. And those who are still around are firefighters, police, EMTs, served in the military, putting their lives at risk when so many of our friends aren't even here anymore. So I'm very proud of you and happy to see you again. And thank you for the service that you and all our first responders give to this city.
Councillor Cleon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I met Mr. Gullidge, John, on the campaign trail in 2017. He lived on Jake Street, actually in the Italian couple apartment, the one who gave us the pizzelles the other day. And he, I knew his family. I knew some of his cousins and stuff. And you know, I would just see him jogging through the neighborhood all the time, just staying fit, staying in shape, and just really dedicated to the job. And so I was honored when I did get elected, and I was lucky enough to be elected by the folks of Ward 4, and I was on appointments and confirmations when we were able to confirm John. And that was such an honor because I could see this young man with such integrity and such dedication, devotion to the city and the job. I also am not surprised to see him, to hear this story, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we see him. So thank you, John, for your service. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's wonderful to see your family and your community. Thank you all for being here. Let's take the next item.
Okay. The next item is item 3.1, a grant of location from Comcast to install 30 feet of conduit in Mount Pleasant Street from utility pole 3 to a point of pickup at 24 to 28 Mount Pleasant Street.
All right, let me ask, actually, before we do this, would you all like to take a photo in here? We could take a recess for 5 minutes to take a photo. Okay, we'll just take a 5-minute recess. Come on in.
There's space. I said, I got plenty of space. Do what you need to do. Do what you need to do, you know? He has to be divided. I said, it won't be hidden. I can't promise that, but you can leave it there.
Thanks for the reminder, Kim.
What's that? Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call this meeting back to order. A quorum is present. Thank you all for your patience, and let's return to the public hearing.
And the item on the table is item 3.1.
Okay, I will declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone in the public here to speak on item 23-1015?
Dave Llewellyn.
Mr. Flewelling, you're unmuted on this end.
Good evening, Dave Llewellyn, Comcast 9 Forbes Road, Woburn, Massachusetts. Would like to speak in favor of the Comcast petition to place 1 4-inch PVC conduit 30 feet plus or minus to provide service to number 28 Mount Pleasant Street.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item?
There are no more.
Excellent. I'll close the public hearing on this. Any comments from the council? Seeing none, that item is approved.
Item 3.2 is a grant of location from Comcast to install 25 feet of conduit in the intersection of Spring Street and Somerville Avenue from utility pole 1 to a point of pickup at the rear of 599 Somerville Avenue.
I will declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on the item?
I have Dave Llewellyn.
Dave Flewelling, please.
Dave Llewellyn, Comcast 9 Forbes Road, Woburn, Massachusetts. Would like to speak in favor of the Comcast petition to place 1 4-inch PVC conduit 25 feet plus or minus to provide service to number 599 Somerville Ave.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
No more.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. This address is in Ward 3. I just want to draw your all's attention to the fact that yesterday a construction crew hit a gas line at this location and caused a temporary evacuation. I don't believe that had anything to do with your work, but I just want to ask you to not do that, please. The neighbors have been through a lot with this construction project, and seeing no further discussion, that item is approved. So Councillor Scott moves to discharge from license and permits item 23-0863. This is an item that we previously considered and sent to committee.
Share this is working.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 23-0863 is a grant of location from Eversource to install a total of 929 feet of conduit and 1 new manhole along Poplar, Linwood, and Joy Streets.
All right, so we've had the public hearing on this. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I've had the time to review this with engineering, and Eversource did come back with an amended set of plans that's detail accurate to the inch to make sure that there's no underground utility conflicts with the Poplar Street pump station work. So this is all set, and I'd like to move for approval.
Excellent. Seeing no discussion, that item is approved.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd like to move to discharge item number 23-0522 from the Finance Committee and take that up tonight.
Excellent. Madam Clerk.
Yes, indeed.
Item 23-0522 is a request of the mayor requesting approval of a 5-year lease with option for renewal with 561 Windsor Street owner LLC for dance space.
I see we have Director Jenkins of the Art Council here to speak on the item. Please.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, President. Thank you, Chair Finance. I mentioned this on Tuesday in our budget hearings. This is an initiative that, we've been hearing a lot in the community, especially for the past 2 to 3 years, in general around art space. This is specifically about trying to support the dance community and the movement community. There's been a regional sort of closure of dance movement space. And so this is our effort to do that. I think over the past 2 years, working with my colleague Callie Chapman here, who's also here in the room, that we've been leasing, or not leasing, we've been actually using pop-up space from Assembly, pop-up space at the Armory, and really it's doing great. Like we're, being able to get this back out to the community on an hourly basis, and this is basically going to be able to help us have a more permanent resting place, because Assembly is basically month to month and kick us out if another retail shop comes in. It's a real favorable lease rate. It's in the Taza building. It's our ACE space set-asides in the Taza. And we're going to do programming. And we also have funding that's coming from community benefit as well from DLJ. We also got a grant, and hopefully our budget gets passed. So we have a pretty secure budget model to be able to do this successfully, as well as the community itself will be helping to deal with some of the cost and override. So we think we'll be able to set up reasonable rates that are fair. And I'm here to answer any questions about the lease or any of the programmatic material. Thank you.
Councillor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, having collaborated just a bit with the Arts Council around the capacity study for arts in the community, and knowing how much there's a hunger for a variety of different arts forms and artists to have more spaces and more resources from the city, I'm very much in favor of this. My only question would be, and it's a two-parter, so please bear with me. Are you planning to take part in the space? And if so, can you demonstrate what dancing you will be doing there?
Through the chair, those days are gone. So my colleague Callie will, if you really want. And we actually do have an opportunity as well. I mean, I'll be frank, there's a huge desire and need for even youth dance in the community. And so hopefully we can be able to capture a lot of different things with this more sort of permanent space.
Councillor Davis, then Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Director Jenkins. Sounds like a solid plan, fully in support of, as you know, expanding any other opportunities for arts and different varieties in the city, and very much so for for youth programming stuff. My question is just from my understanding, what's the time sensitivity? Why are we having this tonight before the council rather than through committee or through the budget process? Do we have to sign the lease, and that's why we're being asked for? Just so I can answer the question if it comes to me.
Sure, through the chair. It was under my understanding that we submitted this in May, and I think it went to Finance Committee, and now it's before you. And to a certain extent, if you all go to summer recess, we may or may not be able to get in there during the summer, and it may not happen until September, right? So there is a little bit of expediency, but I thought that we had it tracked through your own council process as it relates to even your ongoing work with the FY24 budget. So that was my understanding.
I see Councillor Wilson has a...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. If I could just ask you, why are we being asked this as a special request rather than just approving a committee report that recommended approval?
Councillor Wilson.
Mr. President, thank you. Through you to Councillor Davis, happy to answer that. It comes down to the fact that right now there are no Finance Committee meetings scheduled in June. Well, I should say no non-departmental budget hearing Finance Committee meetings scheduled in June. So we wanted to make sure that this was handled, approved in time for them to sign the lease on this. So that's why we're dealing with it this way.
Councillor Klingon, then Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mr. Jenkins. So this will be programming for like anybody who wants to rent space or whatever, like as long as it fits in the schedule.
Through the chair, it'll be for anyone that is specifically a dancer or a movement artist. It's not really going to be a community room, or
No, I understand.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make that clear. Or for music, it's not. We're not opening a rock room, so to speak. So it's very specific.
Yeah, no,
for
I should have
dance.
been more specific through you.
We're going to have flooring in there.
Yeah, no, I should have been more specific. I meant dance, because it's funny, as I scroll through social media, I see like a lot of different long-standing dance studios that are shuttering their doors, and those students there, maybe they're not able to support a whole entire, dance school, but they might want to do something like, when I was a kid, I went to Jody's in Ball Square. I don't know if they're still there, but my point being is that this couldn't come at a better time. I think we're losing dance space. It's something that people just aren't continuing to do, so I welcome and support this.
Thank you.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks so much for being with us tonight and bringing this forward and making sure that we get this ahead of recess. Just a couple quick questions, since this isn't going to the Finance Committee. Is it possible for you to upload a lease, attach it to this item? At least in Legistar, there wasn't a copy of the lease.
Be there. It was through the chair. I'd have to see if the clerk can. I put it up in Minute Track. So
sounds like the lease is available to us.
Great.
I hope so.
And the public, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's fantastic.
I also have one right here.
I'm happy to peruse the lease. Thank you, and through the president to you, just a quick question. Are there any costs associated with the 5-year lease, or are we just kind of set at a, I will read this quickly, but are there any associated costs?
Through the chair, there's definitely associated costs. We're leasing a space at $20 a square foot, which is reasonable. We have a business plan in place, basically using some of our existing OM money that we use annually. Like I mentioned, we have $25,000 annually coming from DLJ as a community benefit that we're going to be using. It sounds a little crazy. He's giving us that money and then we're turning around paying it back, but that's a part of that. And then we just received a $60,000 sort of COVID organizational grant that will also carry us. And then currently, with the 2 existing spaces that we have right now, we're bringing in around $1,300 to $1,400 a month. But these spaces aren't as nice as the one we're actually going to build out. We actually think we can raise the hourly rate a little bit. Right now it's currently $8 an hour, which is nothing. So we should be able to take on the income level to increase that and spread it out. So the annual lease is around $77, and then if we have that money, we think we'll get there. And similar to the Nibble Kitchen that you all approved 5-6 years ago, at this point it's self-sufficient. It's running based on, again, a business model. So we don't anticipate coming back to you mid-year for requesting additional money.
No, thank you for that. And through the president to you, just quickly, my fast math on your 5-year lease cost is about $3,500. Is that the dollar amount that we approved or that we discussed in the Finance Committee this week for art space, or is that a separate appropriation?
Through the chair, 3,500?
35,000.
Right.
Yes.
Through the chair, yes.
Great. Fantastic. Everything is clicking.
Yes.
No, I'm happy to approve this tonight. I have no complaints. I'm going to scan this. Really? Oh. I'll look this over. But this is fantastic. I hope that we can put more resources into this. $35,000. My zeros are throwing me off tonight. For art space that we're charging residents such a modest amount for, that we're going to have in perpetuity for at least 5 years, is just, it's an incredible bargain. And so keep it up, and hopefully your new art space coordinator will only help you expand that space as well. So just very, very excited for the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is in Ward 2. Just wanted to say, thank you to Director Jenkins, as always, making the money go far and really showing up for residents in the community. I appreciate that this has been pulled together, and it is certainly a community benefit. So I would request, I'll move for approval, Mr. President.
Councilor Scott moves to approve this item. Just on the item, I just want to briefly say thank you very much. We hear so much about the need for art space. Everything like this is a huge victory and represents an enormous amount of work, years. So thank you all.
Thank you.
On the item?
This is involving real public.
We should roll call vote this as it involves real property, I am advised.
So on the motion to approve, Councilor McLaughlin. Yes. Councilor Davis.
Really, yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
I verily.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With 10 councilors in favor, none opposed, and 1 absent, that item is approved.
Very well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We're going to be online.
All right, next I would like to take item 4.8.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 4.8 is a resolution by Councilor Strezzo that the Somerville City Council condemns anti-Semitism.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for taking this out of order. So this is a resolution that I wrote, inspired by a colleague in the western part of the state, Councilor Owen Zarrett out of East Hampton, who put forward a resolution calling out anti-Semitism and how there is a anti-Semitic incidents are on the rise in Massachusetts, but also across the nation. And it very much happens in Somerville as well. So when I wrote this and talked with other trusted sources and friends and well-respected people of the community on what this would look like, I think it's important that we talk about it, that we discuss it, but also I'm really tired of bold proclamations. I want concrete steps for action. This is a call to action. This is a call not for words and soapboxes. This is something that affects our community members. And I'm also a Jewish woman, and I'm raising the next generation of Jews as well. And we'll talk more about how, because I will sponsor some Somerville residents to discuss this further, but anti-Semitism is happening in schools, in our schools, and we really have to be discussing it's happening in our community. We have to be discussing the steps we take to call it out. And this is really hard to talk about, quite frankly. We know that the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States and Massachusetts have reached historic highs even within the year. According to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, who wrote a letter of support, it will be included in this item. 2022 was the highest year on record of anti-Semitic incidents. 3,697 reported incidents in the United States alone. This is a 41% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in Massachusetts, outpaced the increase nationally. Like the FBI hate crime statistics reported each year, these numbers are likely significantly underreported. And so with that, I'd like to sponsor some community members to discuss this. And Mr. President.
Of course, the council would like to sign on, and we are honored to be joined tonight by a number of members of our community. Please, and if you'd introduce yourself for our records.
I'm Maria Axner. I'd like to pass these out. Another one here. Okay. So, Mr. President and councilors, my name is Maria Axner. I'm a member of the Jewish community in Somerville. I attend Temple B'nai B'rith Synagogue. I lead workshops on anti-Semitism, and I'm the former director of the New England Jewish Labor Committee. So you probably already know that anti-Semitism is growing in the world, in the U.S. I don't know if you know that it's also growing right here in Massachusetts. As Kristen pointed out, the Anti-Defamation League's did a report called Hate in the Bay State, and found that Massachusetts had the nation's second highest rate of white supremacist propaganda in 2022. It's shocking, isn't it? And that anti-Semitic incidents rose by 41%. And LGBTQ events were also targeted by extremists. So we need to raise awareness of anti-Semitism. The myth says that Jews run the banks, own the businesses, and are in a worldwide network that takes money from working people. The myth says Jews are to blame for economic injustice and other problems in society. People who are suffering, isolated, desperate, worried about their survival often struggle to find out a reason for their struggle. And if they can't find a real reason, there are some people in power who are often only too happy to direct people to the historical scapegoat of the Jews. Anti-Semitism confuses and fools people, partly because it looks different from other oppressions. I mean, they all look different from each other, but people usually have stereotypes of oppressed groups as being poor and disenfranchised and not having access to power. But the way anti-Semitism works is to allow some Jews to power and privilege so they can be visible and ready scapegoats when other oppressed people begin to rise up against the inequities that affect their lives. Just to say, it's also important to know there are Jews who are working class people. In my job, I met them all the time. And some live in poverty, and about 10 to 15% of Jews in the United States are people of color. So we've come together to raise awareness about this form of oppression. Anti-Semitism hurts people really on a daily basis, and I'm not going to go into all the stories. There's so many. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that when they were kids, and some of them are kids now, were taunted by other children saying that Jews killed Jesus. That's something that happens all the time. So right here in Somerville, there are reports of swastikas painted in schools' bathrooms and on desks, and I think Julia will say a few more words about some of the things that have happened there. Yeah, I mean, you know, I know someone, this wasn't in Somerville, but in Massachusetts, who really had to leave his college campus because of all the anti-Semitism, that there were swastikas places, and I mean, they actually evacuated the Jews and the black people because there was so much going on for a while, and they brought him back, but he just left school. He couldn't take it anymore. So, I mean, there was actually, this was not in our state, but this young girl who, she told this story about how there was a club in her high school called the I Hate Jews Club. And she, yeah, for real. And she went to the administration, and they said, well, it's freedom of speech. They can do it. Anyway, so, you know, I won't go into all the horrible stories, but, you know, just that we need to do this. I'll just tell you that the Human Rights Commission in Somerville is working on doing a training for city leaders that will happen in October, just if you want to put that on your radar. Okay, I'll hand it over to Julia.
See how I can do this. Right. No, it's okay. Hi.
Welcome.
Juliet Rooney Varga. I'm a resident here for longer than I like to admit. And some of you who know me might know me as an advocate for climate action, which I've done a fair amount of work in the city for. And my voice is cracking a bit. I speak in public a lot, but this one's really tough for me. I was listening to Kristen and thinking, maybe she's doing the same thing that I'm doing here, because somehow it feels like it's just a really, you know, it was really ingrained in me as a child not to do this. My parents are Holocaust survivors from Hungary. The Nazis were a strong presence at our family dinner table and basically all of our gatherings. I grew up going back to Hungary, where I learned to hide the fact that I was Jewish, along with the rest of my family hiding it. My name shouldn't be what my name is today because of that. But when I was back here in the Boston area, when I was back where I was growing up in Newton and here in Somerville where I raised my 3 children, I thought I was safe. I thought it was safe to raise my children openly Jewish. My grandmother warned me that a mother who actually loves her children, a Jewish, she said it in Hungarian, it doesn't translate exactly, but in Hungarian it's something to the effect of, a Jewish mother should never give birth to a Jewish child. I didn't listen to her. I gave birth to Jewish children. I raised them in a way where they were meeting with Rabbi Eliana, and they had bar mitzvahs, and it was from them, from Rabbi Eliana speaking with them, not from the schools, not from the teachers, not from the superintendent or the principals, that I learned what was happening to them in the Somerville public schools, including Kick a Jew Day, organized on Snapchat, where the kids got points for kicking Jewish children. Swastikas that were found by my son, who knew about his family's history at the Kennedy School. The thing that, in a way, was more painful than finding out about those events was the fact that it was from my rabbi that I found out about them, and that it was up to me to say something, and my community didn't stand with me on this. So I think that kind of, Maria is so good at speaking about this with a much cooler voice, which I had. I struggle with that right now. But I learned the hard way in kind of getting an education about anti-Semitism, that the biases against us are different from other biases. We're seen as cold and other, and also as having access to privilege and competence. And those are biases. But it means that what I learned the hard way is that those biases also mean that violence is justified against us. And so I know in my grandmother's village in Hungary, she was shocked when from one day to the next, neighbors turned against neighbors and she couldn't trust anybody. That was the feeling that I had when I was going to my friends and asking them to come with me to speak to the principal, and they said, no, that's not my story. So I'm just here to say that we need your support. We need your allyship. We need proactive steps to be taken. It's not even proactive. We're reacting at this point. But steps to take to stop this before it gets worse, and also to say that I know, speaking for myself, I want to be an ally for other groups. I understand, I think that that's something that we can have strength in sharing those experiences and in stepping up for each other and being stronger together, but only if we're able to have an open conversation about these things. And only if it's not on the targeted groups alone to stand up and say, we need help. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm here in part because at the bar mitzvah, of her kid. Her father came up to me and said, "Are you sure it's wise that they're coming out as Jewish and now everyone knows that they're Jewish?" And I thought, forgive me, I thought he was really old and out of it, because in this day and age, you don't need to come out as Jewish. And I feel a bit guilty for having said that. So it, in part, is part of why I'm here today. But I'm here mostly to speak to you as I'm Rabbi Eliana Jacobowitz. I'm the religious leader of Temple B'nai Brit in Somerville. I'm a descendant, I'm coming from a Holocaust survivor family, which means we're a very, very tiny family. And I really hope that you will approve this resolution, but mostly, I think it is really just a form to create space to work together about some of the growing and changing issues that people, Jewish people in Somerville are facing and that are very real. Other people have talked about how anti-Semitism is on the rise. In the last report, the last ADL report showed that we're second in the United States. Massachusetts is second after Texas. I don't think we want to be right after Texas in anything, but definitely not in anti-Semitism. When I started working at Temple B'nai Brit in 2008, I would ask the B'nai Mitzvah class when I started teaching about the Holocaust if they know what anti-Semitism is. And usually only one kid or nobody would say that they know what it is. And I had an entire unit to teach them why it's even something that we need to learn about. Last year, they all raised their hand. They all had their own experiences. And it's been this way for like 4 or 5 years, and it's getting much worse because now they each have more than one experience that they can share from their own life. These are kids who attend school in Somerville and also in Cambridge and Arlington. Some of them reported they're being called dirty Jews. A couple reported the Kick a Jew Day in their school. One had someone drawing a swastika on their belonging and threatening them that if they'll go to tell the teacher about it, then everyone will know that they're a teacher's pet because all Jews suck up to the teachers, which is why they only told me, and they made me promise that I'm not going to tell their parents. Had one kid told me that they were told that Hitler should have done a better job. One kid asked me what it means when he's being called a kike. I had to look it up because it's such an old-fashioned slur. One kid told me that he's not sure it's anti-Semitic, but a child threw a penny at him and told him that his people caused 9/11. Adult members of my community report that they are feeling less safe. They're less likely to identify as Jewish. I had a case recently where a person came to me and asked if it's okay to remove the mezuzah on their doorpost so their house is not visibly a Jewish household. People confided to me that they no longer wear their Star of David necklaces because they feel discriminated against when they do. I was asked if it's okay to place the Chanukiah, the Hanukkah menorah, inside the house instead of at the window. And this is here in Somerville. This is our community that is so proud of being welcoming to all. Our building has been operated with locked doors since what happened in Charlottesville. That means that even during services, even on Shabbat during services, you can't come in. You have to have a door code that is regularly changed and that only members of the community can receive by contacting the office. And I know you can relate to how sad it is to have a house of worship that is the doors are never open, even during services. Jews are grappling with the rise in anti-Semitism, but ultimately, we're not going to be able to help ourselves be less hated. We're only as safe as our allies help us be. We're only as safe as the wider community pushes back against this form of hatred, and to do that, we need you. This might be an unpopular comment that I'm making, but I'll make it anyway. I understand and I sympathize with the fact that many people have issue where criticizing Israel and Zionism is referred to as a form of anti-Semitism. But this resolution in front of you today makes no mention of either. So I feel like you should be comfortable setting aside your feelings about Israel and Zionism and speak up against anti-Semitism, against the kind of anti-Semitism that persisted for over 2,000 years, long before the modern state of Israel or Zionism came into being. You should feel comfortable and even proud to stand against anti-Semitic trope about Jews being money-hungry, sexual deviants who seek to control world power and dilute the race. These false accusations have nothing to do with Israel, but they have much to do with the rise of anti-Semitism in this country today. They have much to do with physical violence and discrimination against Jewish people here. I don't think it was explained to you, but that picture that was circulating, those are stickers that were put on random people's cars in Davis Square. And that one was on Facebook, and I received pictures from a couple other people that found those on their cars. Basically, someone put it on cars that already had stickers that seemed to support pride or other lefty sentiments, and someone just stuck those stickers on people's cars. And we weren't able to figure out who it was because it wasn't, it's not like the police can't find cameras, but it wasn't considered to be hate crime enough for there to be an investigation into this. So we don't know who done it. And I get a lot of flyers that are being handed out around here. And those things too mostly go unreported. And I want to support people who would like to find alternative ways of reporting, but I think reporting is so important because otherwise we have no way of seeing how big the problem is becoming. So what I'm asking of you here is to be our allies, to not be silent as we grow fearful, to not wait until things get worse, to speak up, and to stand with us. We're part of the community, we share the same values, and I think we deserve and we need the same protection. And on a personal note, I no longer know in person all members of the council the way that I did before, but I would love to, and I would love to have a conversation, and you probably heard that I have an Israeli accent. I was born there, but I've been here for 25 years. And I'm very happy to discuss the difficult things that might be in your way of supporting the Jewish community here around these issues, because I feel like this is really important to our well-being and to the well-being of our community as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lynn Weissman. My address is, I live at 112 Belmont Street in Somerville. Some of you may know me from my work with the Friends of the Community Path, but I'm here just as a Somerville citizen tonight. I've lived in Somerville since 1994, so quite a while. We've raised our sons here. They went through the Somerville public school system. I'm a member of the Jewish community, and my sons also identify that way. My partner does not. There are a lot of interfaith communities and people of all different kinds of communities here. And I just wanted to recognize that anti-Semitism is just one of the many ways that people are being targeted, probably by many similar groups. I think the targeting is done by many similar groups. My grandparents came from Russia. They fled the pogroms in the early 1900s, and that was basically sort of the persecution of the Jews, the beating, the destroying of their businesses, the killing of them, and many people from Russia came over here then, and all four of my grandparents were from Russia, Poland, and came over here because of the pogroms. Our boys grew up, like I said, in the Somerville Public Schools through, I think, around grade 8. They were, I think, the only Jewish kids in their class. So that was kind of, there were definitely, I think there were a lot of more subtle things that happened. I mean, for instance, I came in, you know, in second grade with a book, a kid's book about Rosh Hashanah with just the Jewish holidays, and I brought in apples and honey. And you know, that's traditional to celebrate the Jewish New Year. It was a pretty secular description of the New Year. It was just kind of saying we celebrate it, we enjoy a sweet New Year, and we do this through apples and honey. And I know that my kids came back saying that one of the kids in the class wanted to eat apples and honey at home, but their parent found out that it was because of a Jewish holiday and said that you cannot do that. That would be like a not good thing. I mean, I think that this kind of thing comes in, you know, overt forms like swastikas in the bathroom, but it's also learned at a very, very young age. And I do think that I don't know exactly how to address it, but I do think if there are ways to address it in the schools, especially from a young age, that would be a very meaningful thing. I know there are certain incidents that I've heard about through friends, not necessarily always through the school system. This is the first time I've heard about this sticker being, you know, posted around. You know, there's sort of a sense that, you know, we're a diverse community and that we, you know, that Somerville, everybody welcomes that, but that's clearly not necessarily true. And clearly in other places around the world where people think things could never happen, you know, there is a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of things that people shouldn't have to fight for their very existence to be. I also just wanted to, you know, I say that my kids also came through Temple B'nai B'rith, you know, and you know, it's a very welcoming community there, and it's very much a shame that the doors do need to be locked there in general. And I wanted to just kind of echo what Rabbi Eliana said about the separation between, you know, Zionism and Judaism, and that those things should be seen as very different thing, and I'm glad to see that. So I hope you'll support this resolution. I hope it goes beyond condemnation and that there are some steps taken in the schools because, you know, these things are learned at a very young age, and maybe even, you know, something for parents. I don't know how that would work, but thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you. Thank all of you for being here tonight. I just want to say, as a Jew myself, as I believe the second Jewish president of the City Council, I believe Councilor Alderman Gewirtz served as president. I'm really thankful for what you're doing here tonight. And I also, you know, I was really moved by the language in this resolution itself, and in particular, there's a part that I'd like to read that Councilor Strezzo wrote. Although the people who are directly targeted by anti-Semitism are Jews, the purpose of anti-Semitism is to divert people's attention away from systemic economic oppression that is directed at most people, as anti-Semitism serves to prevent different racial, religious, and other groups from standing up together against the interests of those in power. I wanted to thank you for that language, which I found really powerful. Councilor Pineda-Neufeld and Burnley.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to say thank you to the rabbi and the members of the community here. As one of the other Jewish members of the council, you know, this resolution hits home, raising a Jewish son. And I think about what you said about overt and more subtle displays of anti-Semitism in our community. And for those who think it doesn't happen in Somerville, they're just plain wrong. When I ran for office in 2021, I was asked by someone who everyone in this room knows when I became more publicly Jewish. When I shared my son's name as Isaac weeks ago to someone everyone in this room knows, I was asked why I chose such a Jewish name for my son. These are things happening every day in the city, and I just wanted to share that experience because it's so easy for us to say, this doesn't apply to us. We live in Somerville. we're lucky here. But it's happening every day, and it's happening in our schools, and it's happening to people we know. And so I really want to thank you. And like President Ewan Campen said, there are pieces of this resolution that really hit home, and wanted to reiterate the importance of us, all of us as elected leaders, to use our voice to condemn and combat any and all manifestations of anti-Semitism. And so I'm going to sit with that today, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want to first start off by saying thank you to all the speakers who came forward and shared their stories, the stories of their families, and put out the call that we should be a better community than this. And thank you to Councilor Strezzo for putting forward this item in the first place. Your stories really hurt my heart. I know the Axner family specifically because of organizing alongside Jewish folks against discrimination of all kinds. And I don't think I would be who I am if it wasn't for my friends who are Jewish and for the people who've helped teach me about community and organizing and caring for each other and tikkun olam and all these traditions that I didn't grow up with. I didn't grow up around many Jewish people as far as I knew. I didn't grow up with the traditions or the rituals, but something that is incredibly beautiful to me about this community is that I've learned so much from members of Somerville's Jewish community, which is a really powerful and beautiful community that has done so much on so many different issues, from the environmental justice to support for immigrants to all sorts of things. And I've heard from so many of them how hard it was to step up in those roles as Jewish people themselves and not just say, I'm here to support ending climate change, or I'm here to support my immigrant neighbors, but to also say, and that ties back into my Jewish identity. This resolution, I think, is incredibly detailed and well worded. I won't read any of it right now because it's not in front of me, but the words in it, and as well as the rabbi's words, really do remind me of how important it is for us to understand anti-Semitism as part of a larger web of discriminations that target people, marginalized people across the world. And if folks want to learn more about that, they can read an incredibly well-written article from decades ago called Skin in the Game, which really drives home how anti-Semitic thought is at the core of white supremacist activity and organizing in the United States and has been for decades. And if folks want to find organizations and learn more, I'd say one recommendation I would say is JFRIJ, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. It's an incredible organization. It's based in New York, I think, but has tons of resources. That is all to say, we absolutely need to be doing more education around these things. We absolutely need to, as individuals and as communities, put the time and effort into learning. But learning is not enough. Education is not enough. Condemnation is not enough. If there's any ways that we as elected officials can step forward with either policy or law or anything, I please ask the community to ask more of us and help point us in the right direction. And I won't speak for anyone else here, but if members of the community have issues and they feel isolated, please ask of us to be your neighbors, because we are your neighbors. And none of us are free until we all are free. And so I just think we absolutely must do more on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I'll be brief, and I won't go nearly as deep as some of my colleagues have, and but thank you for those comments. Just I will say that as the counselor who is honored to have Temple B'nai B'rith in my ward, as well as Rabbi Eliana, who lives in Ward 4, you know, me being, first of all, my mother didn't raise me in a way that she was, I am, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, other than like, I was the furthest thing in terms of like, she made it very clear and taught me about the persecution of Jewish people, and it was always something that I was well aware of and made sure to fight against. But I would say that, you know, in the fact that your temple has to have the doors closed, you know, what I can offer is, if, you know, I offer my body, if anybody ever comes for you, or, you know, Eliana, you know, call me and I will be there. And you know, that's what we Somerville kids do. So thank you for this, and thank you, Councilor Strezzo, for bringing this forward.
Councilor Davis, then Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to our speakers. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Your statements really sit and speak for themselves, and I my good colleague at large, I don't want to try and, I couldn't speak as eloquently as Councilor Burnley did, but I want to know, because you know, it's so, it hurts so much to hear that the degree to which things like this are happening in the schools, in the community. You know, not that we all didn't know that there are, you know, there are issues out there. We've heard about Massachusetts being having its unfortunate superlative, but to hear the specific stories and to hear the specific experiences, it's, you know, it catches me a little bit by surprise, and it really troubles me. And I you know, I'm hesitating to go back to a story from when I was in school and there was incidents there, because the point is this is not anything new, and it's not anything new to Massachusetts. So I'll leave all of your statements to stand on their own and just say thank you. But I do, Madam Clerk, if I could submit a late item. I'd like to request that the police department report to this council the decision process behind not, well, to whatever extent an investigation was made of the incident that's reflected in the stickers that was handed out, so that we could understand what decision was made, what was behind that. If, you know, I'm trying to think of whatever we can do other than just express our support and gratitude. I think that certainly deserves an answer. So thank you.
Councilor Klingon would like to co-sponsor that late item, as would the entire council. People are pointing at me. It's a member of the public. Please, can you take the microphone, please?
I mean, I guess the one thing that I would say is, like, it's not, like, the fact that it's a surprise is, like, almost painful, right? It's like, it shouldn't be on us. Like, there should be policy where, like literally we went to the principal and we said, what would it take? How many swastikas would it take for fill in the blank note to go home to, for it not to be me knocking on doors, right? For a note to go home to the parents. He said, well, maybe 10. Like, he actually had a number. Like, and so that's, like, one wasn't enough. That's wrong, right? That's wrong. There should be policy that says when, like, you know, I'm a professor. I have to admit, if I walked in, like a few years ago, if I walked into my classroom and somebody stuck a swastika, I wouldn't have known what to do. Now I know what to do. And there should be clear policy, right? That so that you don't have to ask the questions. The poor guy doesn't have to come up with a number, 10. He should know. This is what I do. I report it. It goes out to the community. There's space for healing and for working together, tikkun olam.
Councilor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julia. I completely agree. And so a further point, something we can do to you, Mr. President, as our representative on the school committee, as policies within the schools, and much of what, to the degree that this context is within the schools is beyond our authority. Other than through you as our representative, I trust that you'll bring this up with the school committee and, let us know how those conversations go.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. And to be clear, yes, I would be more than happy to share this resolution with the school committee and to invite the speakers to come. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. And through you, thank you to our speakers who are very eloquent. And I would like to also echo that this should not be a surprise. NSC 131 is homegrown here in Eastern Massachusetts. Patriot Front. These are homegrown organizations that are explicitly anti-Semitic and violently anti-Semitic. Ward 2, unfortunately, over the last several years, has seen its share of anti-Semitic graffiti, just the most blatant and crass that you could imagine. And from time to time, we do find flyers, stickers in Ward 2. And having a tracking mechanism, some way of reporting these incidents, I think would be a great mechanism. I appreciate the motion by my colleague from Ward 6 because, again, having information on what is happening and where can help us, can certainly not hurt us. I am proud of my neighbors in Ward 2 who stand up and who help clean up this graffiti, who help tear down these signs. And of course, I stand with my neighbors, my friends, and my family who are Jewish. But again, it is, this radicalization happens all around us. So it is certainly not a surprise. It is disappointing. And I agree with the call for us to do anything we can to help in combating that. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, especially to the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Gomez-Moacad and Wilson.
First, I want to apologize to Julia on behalf of the community that she had to be alone in a situation like this. And it's so important in our schools that we talk about diversity, inclusion, it's religion, it's everything, and we should be including that. And I also want to say that there was a comment of Jewish, or people of color, or Judy Pineda-Neufeld is both Latina and Jewish. We're all really interconnected, and in these different experiences, we do have a common bond. I have a dear, dear friend who's a white Jewish woman who works in Elmhurst Hospital, who's taught herself Spanish, who knows the different, when I say she should have conferences, she works with just immigrants, Nepalese, Mexican, Argentinian, Indian, you name it, and she understands the different cultures, the different foods. When they tell her, what should I eat? She said, did you talk to your grandmother? Feed your children what you fed, and she has such an empathy, like it's just amazing, and that comes from these different experiences that we do hold a common bond. I did grow up with a high school that was 25% Jewish, because there is a strong presence in Latin America of the Jewish community, and we do have a bond here, and we have to look after each other. My first architecture book came from my father's colleague, who was a Holocaust survivor, and we heard all he's the only one who made it from his family, and so the fact is we're all so interconnected in so many ways, and I've been obsessed, Spanish have our own history there and everything, and it just seems to me, you're right, the end is anti-Semitism is about breaking us apart, and I thank you for bringing us to our attention. Thank you, Councillor Stresso, and I think that's maybe that's why I have that warmth and empathy that Councillor Stresso and Pineda-Neufeld always show to me here. It's a show of that, so thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for being here. That was tough to hear, but thank you for sharing those stories. Like Councilor Gomez-Moca had mentioned, like the toughest part really was hearing how little support was there when you went for help about this. Clearly, we as a city need to do better. I'll offer my support if you ever find yourselves in a situation like that. It just strikes me throughout our history, Jewish Americans have been there for other groups in the struggle for civil rights, and we're in really scary times right now with the rise of anti-Semitism. People are feeling very emboldened nationally, and I think we just need to be there for our Jewish neighbors.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rabbi Eliana wanted to speak again, please. And then I'd like to say something as well. Thank you.
I wanted to clarify one thing, which is we're not without support. We're not in a desert of lack of care. Major Curtaton and Mayor Ballantyne have been really supportive, and I regret to say that there have been more than a couple opportunities to show this support, even in the current administration already. It is more a matter of lack of systemic education in the school and in the police and the fire department. And so it really depends on who we reach, the specific people. I worked a lot with Mary Skipper on getting training for the schools, and that helped a little bit. But I ideally wanted there to be a structure for reporting specifically so teachers will know what to do if there's an anti-Semitic case. In particular, that they don't just erase swastikas without recording them and reporting them, which happens a lot. And I don't have yet a relationship with the current people, and I would love to continue this work because I felt like that helped a little bit, and there's a lot more to be done. With regard to the police, we had some very caring and knowledgeable people. We also have some people on the police force who completely are lacking in education on this topic, so they do the best that they understand, to the best of their understanding, and sometimes they're really off. We had, in particular, we had a case of a letter with unrecognizable substance with powder in it. The police person who got it left it on his desk and went on vacation. We had, after the Pittsburgh Tree of Life event, we had police presence to help us welcome the kids into the Sunday school, and that lovely person who was not from the Somerville police, who was brought in as support, stood there, and I asked him to not racially profile our students because our school is really diverse, and to not just assume that we will all look a certain way. And he just couldn't do it. And then he made comments about how we're good with money and stuff like that. And that was the person who was sent to make us feel better in the aftermath of something that was difficult. At the same time, I had some people on the police force who gave me their personal numbers, who made themselves available above and beyond to try to be supportive. So again, to me, it seems like having a way to educate everyone across the board, so it won't be a question of calling 911 and wondering whether we'll get someone who will know what to do or someone who will be very dismissive. That is what I'm striving for. And the last thing is that I would really like for there to be a better reporting system for low-key anti-Semitic things, like for graffiti. How do we report this? Things that really do not need to go to the police but cannot go unreported. And ideally, I would love for there to be a way on the city website or another way to really have a way for members of the public to know what to do in this case, because people do not understand the implication of seeing something happening and not reporting it. The last time I stood here, and this came up, it was some years ago, the chief of police at the time, Chief Fallon, was asked to bring a report of anti-Semitic cases, and it showed a decline in anti-Semitic reports because there were none reported, even though I knew personally that there were more. And so we have to find a way of keeping track of this locally so we can do something about it better together. And you all seem to be interested in practical things that we can do. And I feel like education's in the school, in the police department, and alternative but good simple policies of reporting, those all will be an amazing ways to start this journey. So thank you for hearing me again.
Thank you, Rabbi. Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Mr. President. So with that, and I know we talked a little bit about this picture you have before you, and I suppose we should submit it for a public record to be attached to the resolution, so I'll do that as well. But so this picture, for anyone who can't look at it at this second, was a post from a Facebook, the Davis Square Facebook page last year, and it's a vile picture of an anti-Semitic image that was placed on a car, and the person didn't know it was placed on their car, and so they posted the picture just to make the neighborhood aware of this happening, and this is kind of ridiculous. How is this happening here? And the car was parked in the Rite Aid parking lot off the Red Line Davis Square stop. And when it happened, I reached out and asked if anyone wanted to join me, and I met with the police department detective who took took it on, and we walked, and I walked with the information technology person in the police department. We walked the area to see where these stickers were placed, because these were intentional stickers, and there was another sticker placed in the area. This person walked the area. It was all intentionally placed, and yeah, I felt like I was fighting for relevance when I reported it, when I discussed it, when I was asking for help. And I'm not saying, like, with the police department, but I'm calling on our community to really take this, to report this. And I echo what was said about the schools. It's when incidents happen with reporting, but it's also we need to take the additional step to learn from that and see what that means of what do you think saying this means and how it affects other people and others in our community. We have to, and so I'm asking that this resolution be sent as well to all of the incoming, all of our school committee as well, but all of our incoming principals for the next school year, Madam Clerk, and also our incoming superintendent and assistant superintendent, and that we send it as well to the state delegation as well. And why the heck not, let's send it to the governor's office. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, that item is approved. Thank you all so much for being here. So now we're going to move on to issues related to the Winter Hill School.
And the next item that we'll take out of order.
Councillor Strezzo.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt this, but would it be okay to take a 3-minute break to just process this?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yes, let's recess for 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah. And, yeah, I'm sure the governor's letting it just, yeah. All right. Handful, yep. CC you on all of that.
Whenever that happens, you like to
I do. I really do.
So what's that, like 30 people?
Yes, although I email it, right? It's 2023, and so typically I will just BCC everybody. But yes, I do it. Although incoming principals, I was just saying to the president, we did. I did do that. It was no, it was Willie. It was Willie's resolution.
Can we
Then he
send
asked
this to
go to the president.
like the
Yes.
president of the United
I will
States?
tell you, actually, not easy to find an email, but I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They respond?
No, they didn't respond. It has been 5 minutes, if that is of value.
All right, folks, we're going to get started. Thank you all. So we'll call this meeting back to order. Colleagues, there are a lot of items came in this week from counselors on the Winter Hill School. This is obviously the biggest issue that the city is dealing with. I want to extend my gratitude to everybody in the school district, obviously all of the families who are dealing with this, and apologize to them for what they're having to deal with. Students were back in temporary classes as of today. And so we're going to go through, obviously, all of the items that are on our agenda, but I thought it made the most sense to welcome Mayor Ballantyne to give us an update on where we stand. And I see also that a lot of the relevant staff are here if there are questions. So please, Mayor Ballantyne.
Mr. President, I'll read the item. It's item 10.4, communication of the mayor conveying information regarding the Winter Hill Community Innovation School.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, Honorable City Council, for the opportunity to share an update on the response that's underway for the Winter Hill Community School. So today we successfully got the kids back to school, over 400. The 1st through 8th grades went up to Tufts University, pre-K and K. Went to the Capuano, that was about 51 students, and about 50 students from the AIM program went over to the Edgerly. The Winter Hill Community School also had a 96% attendance today. Children were excited. They were excited to be seeing one another and, you know, seeing their new spaces. What I'd like to do is, if you walk away with one message tonight, it's we hear you, we are with you, and we are committed to either a renovation or complete rebuild. I look forward to working with the school community, the city council, to make sure our students and teachers have the environment they need for success. As mayor, I understand the process is frustrating. My apologies. I stand before you today to be crystal clear. We will allocate all needed resources to this project with urgency. We can and we will get it done together. Bottom line, we will ensure our Winter Hill students have a great place to learn. They have a safe place through the end of this school year. They will have a welcoming space for the summer program, and we will have quality classrooms ready for them this fall. And for the work of the rehab or rebuild will stay front and center. We are mobilized and focused. We do need the support of the council to allow us to keep our energies on the work to move forward with purpose to overcome this challenge. We also need the council to approve the funding requests for what's needed, whether that's staff leading this new effort, resources for repairs or relocation, and ultimately the appropriate funds to gut renovate or rebuild. For this budget cycle already, you have before you about $7.8 million from free cash to the Facilities Renovation Construction Stabilization Fund. That will bring that up to a little over $12 million. We also have before you $1.3 million for a feasibility study. At the same time, we have already submitted the MSBA statement of interest, and we've added a senior project manager position. Just to know that myself and Dr. Curley, the superintendent of the public schools, have been in contact with the MSBA, and we are going to meet with them next week. People are upset, and they should be, about our failing buildings, legacy infrastructure projects. I'm upset too. Our schools must not only be safe, but they must offer the best quality learning environments for our kids. Our students need the resources and great teachers that will help them reach for their futures. That's why As other communities lay off teachers and vote down overrides to fund new schools, in Somerville we are making historic investments in education and working to make sure school buildings are where we can best ready our kids for the future. There are a lot of things to do. We all know that. And we have a difficult challenge ahead of us to get ready. The details are rapidly developing, and we will report back to you regularly, at least at a minimum once a week, as we have been communicating with the families daily. And also, Rich and Melissa are here to answer any questions you might have about the situation. I look forward to your collaboration and support.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And just a couple notes before we open this up. So there are a number of financial requests on tonight's agenda that I know we're going to take up for immediate consideration after this. I'll just start by saying I think the most emphatic message that has been communicated to me is a sense of concern about next year specifically, and a desire for there to be, as soon as humanly possible, a public, community, transparent process around what the options are and how to make that decision collaboratively. I'm not looking for a date tonight, but I just want to do my job to communicate. I think that is item number one of, I actually ran into a parent today who explained to me that they were emotionally experiencing the beginning of the pandemic again, where it was, okay, we're going to close for a day, we're going to close for 2 weeks, we're going to close for a month, we're going to close for who knows how long. So I think just it's impossible to overstate the emotional challenge that families and educators are going through, and I think the most critical thing is that kind of next step, next year, concrete answers, and so I know that your team and all of you are working on that, and I really think that's what I want to emphasize tonight, and obviously as part of that, a communication about the clear next steps, which those can't happen separately. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Totally agree with you. That's why we will keep you apprised, weekly. Once we meet with the MSBA, we will also be able to understand what our wiggle room options are. We have been well, I guess I'll talk about it. We have been also in communication with the Archdiocese, and we have been a number of weeks ago when they first announced that they were going to close down Mattinock Park, Mattinock School. We're still waiting to hear back from them, and after our meetings next week, the other, buildings that we know of that exist here and give us the opportunity to have safe learning invites are also the Edgerly and the Cummings. But really, we need to hear from a lot of people. We have a lot of conversations going, and after our meetings next week, we hope to be able to share more back. And we will be having a community meeting, just as you said, and we've committed to it very soon to be able to talk about September.
Thank you for that. Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, and I have an order that I'll be speaking on, but while the good mayor is here, I just want to emphasize my thoughts behind this. Similarly, I've been talking to many people, and what I want to say is that I feel like the sooner we can make the decision on whether or not we're going to open the school back up again in the fall, regardless of which direction we go in, I think is going to at least show that commitment that something's going to happen with that building. I did put in the order reconstruction. I could have used the word demolition, but I definitely don't think that people have the trust and the confidence in that building to, even with some minor repairs, go back in the fall. So I feel like if we can hear that, there's definitely a plan to not send kids back into that building, that will inform, I think, the speed and everything else at which we move, whether it be we go for MSBA money or not. Any of these avenues, said meeting that should take place hopefully within days rather than weeks, as far as what the options are, and then have that decision made to not reopen the school. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm. Unless in those out of those meetings, if many parents and teachers were to say that they would feel confident to go back into the building, that would be something that they would have to really bring forward. But at this time, I'm not hearing anybody saying that, and I personally, wouldn't feel comfortable sending my own child back into the building, even after some sign off from an engineering firm or peers.
Through you, Mr. President, thank you, Councillor Klingon. May I also invite up Director Raish to speak on that point?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I want to thank you, President, for almost not recognizing me, but through you to the Ward 4 Councilor, thank you for those thoughts. I've had conversations with many people in the community over the past few days, a lot of them echoing your sentiments. It's a little premature right now to rule anything in or out. I understand fully that we need to rapidly report out to the community and have a community meeting to get input on the direction. We do want to sort of vet out what is impossible and what is possible so that we can have that be a meaningful dialogue and then move forward in the most expeditious manner on something that the community can rally behind for August 30th, which is the first day of school, and let us have a target on that. So we really do want to have that conversation once we've ruled out the impossible and focus down on something that we can focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. You all set, Councillor? Councillor Wilson. Oh, sorry, please.
Oh, yeah, Mr. President, thank you for that. And again, I just want to reiterate my wish is to not see anybody back in the building personally, because I do think that, while we are going to move on the building at some point I think while kids are settled, we can use this time over the summer and somewhat of a blessing happening when it did. If it happened in December, we'd be having a different conversation. So I really urge the administration and the mayor to just pull the trigger, make some bold decisions, and move as rapidly as possible to eventually get these kids back settled into a building. I know it'd be a few years off, but hopefully that wouldn't add too much more time on to the displacement of the children, and it also would show a major commitment to doing something with that building. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, then Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I want to back up what my colleagues have said so far. In addition to getting all the emails we're all getting from the Winter Hill community, I have a lot of friends and neighbors with kids at that school. I've coached for soccer. I've coached kids from that school. And the one thing I hear a lot is there's a real issue here with the trust that they have. They feel very burned by what has happened there. There's a lot of anger, understandable anger, and it's going to take some work to rebuild the trust. And I think one of the key ways that we can do that is just by embracing just basic transparency around this, making sure that decisions are being communicated, that everyone understands everything that the folks with the city are grappling with and arriving at the best solution here. And I would just really advocate for making sure that the superintendent, that the chair of the school committee, perhaps the city council rep, and I would even say a member of the teaching team at the Winter Hill, and perhaps someone from the Winter Hill families are at the table when these decisions are being discussed and made. And yes, I echo the call for a good community process here, where the Winter Hill community is brought in and briefed on all this and given a chance to weigh in on the different options that are before them. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for being here tonight. I love what I'm hearing about this focus on making sure that there is a place for August for the kids of the Winter Hill School. I think the sooner that information can be communicated, as my colleague said, even just that the school is not going to be reopening, I think it would be a mistake to wait until we have all the information to keep communicating and bring people in on the process. I love the suggestion of my colleague at large for having people in the room where it happens when these decisions are being discussed, and I agree that a community engagement of some sort is going to be necessary once we have a set of possible solutions for a future building plan here. I don't think it needs to be particularly sugar-coated. I think we have some incredibly capable and intelligent parents here in Somerville, and I think when you lay out the options on the table, there's probably going to be some pretty clear winners in terms of the time trade-off and location, cost, et cetera. The one thing, Mr. President, through you to our mayor, that I'm really glad to hear, but also I have a concern about. I'm glad to hear you're meeting with the MSBA next week. My concern, and this was something we discussed in Finance Committee last night, Mr. President, is that right now the model we are following continues to be the MSBA Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 model, and we are squarely in Phase 1 right now. We would be hiring an owner's project manager and designer, and then using them to launch the feasibility study. The feasibility study does have information that we need to be making good decisions about what gets built next, but it also has a lot of other stuff in it that may not be relevant if we're not actually going to be pursuing an MSBA process. So I guess I understand the desire to be in that cycle for the opportunity of getting some grant money from MSBA, but at some point, for the expedience of the thing, I think we need to be prepared to, as they say, fish or cut bait. If the judgment is that we're not going to get MSBA funding this cycle, then I believe that there is a significantly abbreviated study pathway here that could lead to a place where a decisive choice could be made, and we can unleash Director Raish and the entire infrastructure and capital projects teams on delivering a school building as soon as possible. So that is, I guess I will put it out there that is my concern, and my question to you is when do you anticipate being able to make a decision about whether or not to continue to pursue the MSBA process or to depart and commit to going it alone?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. President, to the good counselor from Ward 2, we're currently at two paths. We're doing two parallel paths right now. And we have shared this back with the school committee and the school administration, who, by the way, have been in every single one of our meetings in capital planning since last year, and also the chair of the school committee. So we have put money aside, and Mr. Bean has also said this, I believe, to the Finance Committee, to fund a feasibility study. At the same time, we can still apply, which we did, to the MSBA through a statement of interest. Maybe they'll give us money, but we are still moving forth on two parallel tracks. We can pay for the feasibility study. I will ask Mr. Raish to talk about, the details. The enrollment study just finished. I know there's a lot of studies, and I know that that's frustrating, but the enrollment study tells us that what just came back is that the public school student population is on a decline, but special ed students are on a rise. So the types of classes, do we need classes for 25 students, or are we building classes that are for 5 students? So that was informed by the enrollment study, and I guess I would pass on to you, Mr. Raish,
Mr. President,
the next steps.
Before we hear from Director Raish, I just want to, if I could follow up.
Please.
And I love hearing from Director Raish, of course. But the answer to my question there seems to indicate to me that I wasn't being clear enough. The two tracks of whether or not we would get MSBA's assistance to fund a feasibility study, or continuing through a grant process, versus us funding a feasibility study is not the only choice. Those are certainly two tracks that the city is pursuing right now, but there is a third option, which is to simply undertake a study which would give us the basic information we need in terms of siting and construction timelines, and again, once the K-8 master plan study comes back and we have a comprehensive sense of what education facilities are needed in a building, the actual feasibility study, it could be a less ornate process and a more nuts and bolts, like, let us look at the sites that we have available, let's look at the building strategies we have available, and then bring that to the mayor, ultimately, for a decision on how to proceed. So I just want to ask, is there a point at which, where is the point at which you would say, we don't need the entire feasibility study, we need to get information quickly and make a decision quickly?
That's what we're trying to, through you, Mr. President, that's what we're doing. If there, and this is why I wanted to bring Director Raish up there, if there is a longer version that I am unaware of, then I would ask him to speak for it. But we're moving as quickly as possible to get the information there, and so we can move on to design. We need community process too, which everybody has said that they value and is important. Some of and there's been all kinds of questions. Do you go with a middle school? Do you have a K-5 school? That's part of the community process. We're not so we're moving as quickly as possible in the most thoughtful way. We're not looking to delay this. This is why we've specifically said we're funding the feasibility study from our free cash, and if we get some money through the MSBA, fine, but we're still going to move through on it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Director, did you want to speak on this?
I have a direct question for Mr. Scott related to this.
Let's hear from Director Raish, and then we'll take your question.
Through the President to the Ward 2 Councilor, I think the answer to your question is one that I think a lot of people in the community need. And I'm enthusiastic to meet with the MSBA next week. We've got 2 calendar holds, one for Wednesday, one for Friday. I'm hoping that one of those will be filled. And that conversation will not only, sort of focus on the change, the essential change in our SOI, given where we are, but also what the process looks like moving forward, so that we can perhaps get to some conclusions in a faster method than their usual one. I'm hoping that we get a feel from them on what that calendar looks like. Do we have a special calendar? I don't know now, but those will be the types of questions that we'll be exploring with the MSB starting next week.
And if I could, we had a related conversation last night in Finance Committee. My recollection of where we landed was, big picture for folks watching this at home. We are trying to get money from the state, obviously. We want to do that quickly. If for some reason that is not possible, these schools are getting rebuilt. The Winter Hill and the Brown. That is happening as fast as humanly possible. That's what I heard last night, and I think it's really important that the community understands that all of us are on board with that. Councilor Gomez-Mocad?
So I'm very, very confused, Councilor Scott, and I want to make sure we're not misleading the public right now. Can you be specific what you mean by an abbreviated study? Have you looked at other school studies? What do you mean? I don't know what your experience is with buildings and what you know, because I think the public hears that and they think that can happen, but we're not being concrete of, everybody's like, I've even heard within this room that we don't need feasibility studies. And you never, ever, ever do a project without a feasibility study because you put a lot of money at risk. You know, I can't say, I'm just going to spend 120,000 square feet of school building, spend $120 million, and that's that. Because we're going to end up in the same situation we're ending up right now. I don't know if you recall, but when the school committee presented their budget, the school buildings, we have to add 3 classrooms all of a sudden, and I'm not really sure. We don't, because of special needs, and special needs need a different space requirement than regular students, and that's, so we need to do a certain level of analysis. And I want to make sure we're in a moment of crisis. I don't want to repeat the COVID fiasco that happened with the public, of misinforming the public. I want to make sure we're really clear to what are the steps that need to take in a basement. I know we're all in the culture of HGTV. That's not how buildings happen. There's a process that you need to do to analyze sites, look at soil conditions, what type of, where the Winter Hill is in a hill, is a contaminated site. You have to look at what's the programming inside of that building, and what is our growth going to look like, because I don't build an inpatient addition and say, I just want 100 beds just because. I have to have a justification. And remember, we are using tax dollars here. We're building upon property taxes that affects our folks. So we have to have a certain process. And we also have, we're dealing with 2 schools as well, and we have to see where they, where locate them. So I'm just a little confused when we say abbreviated study without having done, without being very concrete. And I'll tell you right now, I spent last night at 2 a.m., someone said Watertown built their schools in 3 years. That was Rami Bridge comes and tells me this. When I go in and look at the history, in 2016, SMAN did a master plan for the school buildings. In July 2017, they put recommendations to the City Council. In August 2017, they set up the schematic funds, approval of schematic funds. Notice that schematic funds, because we don't know how much money we need for the building, which is, I think, what the administration is trying to do now, and establish the building steering committee. Between 2017 and 2018 was schematic design. There's 4 steps to a building. There's schematic design, design development, construction documents, and then there's the bidding process. At that moment, that was a year process at Watertown, and Watertown only had small additions to their projects. These were not ground up and complicated sites that are in the hillside that might be contaminated, as we're likely going to find in the Winter Hill. That's my assumption. Sorry, that's what happens when you work on an area. So that was 1 year for schematic design. Between September and December 2018, it took that's 3 or 4 months to approve funds, and from November 2018 to 2019, it was construction documents, and finally, construction lasted about 1.5 years. Again, we don't know the type of building. So overall, from 2016 to 2021, 5 years. And this was without MSBA funding. So I don't want to mislead the public that we're going to do feasibility study in 1 year, we're going to design in 1 year, and build in 1 year. Not even our 12-unit housing developments happen in that time. So I just want to be really, really careful. We did this fiasco during COVID. We can't misinform our public. And I ask you that you respect professionals who work in this industry.
Just a reminder, everyone, we go through the president. We don't speak directly to one another.
And smirking at me right now is uncalled for and out of position and disrespectful, sir. I have 26 years of professional experience, 2 degrees. If you want to smirk at me, please, by all means, try it again. Because you do not mess
with a Latina.
Okay, we go through the president, and we certainly do not threaten one another. Councillor Scott, would you like to respond?
Yes, sir. I believe there was a question in there, a question not pertaining to my professional qualifications. But in terms of what it means to do an abbreviated study, which I believe is a fundamental question, I appreciate, of course, the detailed discussion of processes that are required to go through before we construct a public building, and my colleague is spot on. There's a lot of that we need to know. However, in terms of a feasibility study, I would point out that the Phase 3 requirements of the MSBA process has a 25-item checklist that requires going back and forth from a school building committee to the MSBA, to getting a district response, to review comments that are issued by the MSBA, that goes then to a vote. So there's a lot of back and forth in a feasibility study that is done to MSBA standards to comply with MSBA's process. And that a study that has perhaps a somewhat reduced scope and does not have to go through that process can be a faster one. I'm certainly not making any ludicrous assertions that there's going to be a building built by this time next year. My understanding of the engineering process on this is that inside of 2 years to be ready to make the decisions necessary to get to schematic and construction design, to breaking ground. 2 years, inside 2 years is a very aggressive time schedule. And honestly, that time schedule could be delayed if the site that was selected requires demolition, right? That question alone about whether or not the site chosen for a future facility or multiple facilities can add immense complexity and time to the construction process, and I think is going to have to be part of the community's and ultimately the mayor's decision-making on the process. Once you get into the ground, it's a 3-year process. We've seen how long it takes to build a school. It's in your district. You've seen it very personally. So I certainly don't believe I have a misunderstanding of the technical challenges before our infrastructure and asset management team. I work with these teams very closely, and I'm certainly not making a suggestion to the public that this is going to take less than potentially 5 years to get to a final constructed solution here in the city. However, I am looking to shave any months and costs that we can off the process to get us moving, and in part just to, again, reassure our city's community that we are taking in every aspect the most expedient approach we can. So that's all I'm saying. I clearly have been broadly misunderstood and mischaracterized. So thank you for the opportunity to clarify and answer my colleague's question.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillors Kelly, Pineda Neufeld after that.
Thank you so much, Chair. I mean, I think the issue that I'm struggling with the most tonight and that I was struggling with yesterday is we were having this exact conversation a year ago. And the conversation that we had last night in the Finance Committee was we have spent the last year delaying this process. I was in a wake in May, confronted by family members who send their children to the Winter Hill School, saying, what the hell is going on with this building? Right, I was bearing a family member, and my other family members were asking me what's going on with the Winter Hill before this incident happened. So quite frankly, I think I appreciate Councillor Scott's comment about time because we've squandered the last year. We had educators come to us with families last year saying, make movement on this now. And we are now currently in a crisis where we have a school community that is separated all around town. Parents who spent 5 hours with us on Monday night saying, close the damn school and build us a new one. And educators who don't even know when they're going to be able to pack up their classrooms or if they're going to have to go back to their classrooms. Professionally, I negotiate the amount of time and boxes that educators have to pack up their classrooms when they're moving to a new school. I'm literally doing that right now in another community. So the sooner we have some real concrete answers about what's going to happen in the fall, I think that's going to put a lot of folks at ease, But right now, $1.3 million for a feasibility study doesn't tell an educator where they're going to go on August 31st. It doesn't tell my autistic cousin where she's going to go on August 31st. It doesn't tell the school community if they're going to be together on August 31st. So I am imploring you to maybe go back and run the tape from Monday night. Listen to what those family members said, because they said close the school and give us what we're going to be doing in the fall. And so I will not act like I am an expert on school buildings. I did spend quite a bit of time in the State House trying to reform the MSBA and got a little bit done. But by God, that is a complicated behemoth to tackle. And to act like we are going to move through that process in any sort of expeditious way is not connected to reality. So I hope that by the end of the next 10 days, we have a budget in front of us that has a dollar amount that says where kids and staff are going to be in September, that gives a little bit more faith after we squandered a year, and that demonstrates a real commitment to these kiddos and these families who have suffered long enough.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Pineda-Neufeld, and then Gomez-Mocad.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sitting with, I believe it was your comment about a member of the community saying this feels like COVID, and echoing Councilor Wilson's call for greater transparency and communication. I think back to those early days of COVID, you know, I joined not the staff, I was a contractor during COVID in April of 2020 is when I started, which was a month after everything shut down. And the way in which the city treated the emergency, you know, there were ways in which we can dissect and debrief and kind of go back and forth about what was right or wrong about the level of communication. But I will say there was a level of communication about the crisis that is different than what we're hearing now about the Winter Hill School. And if we can treat this as a crisis, the way we treated COVID as a crisis, there were daily emails, if you all remember in the beginning, with numbers of cases, numbers of deaths, numbers of positive tests, you know, when vaccines were coming, opportunities to get masks. There was, and I remember those emails because I was on the team translating those emails every single day before they went to bed. Once the crisis, you know, once things shifted and changed, those went to weekly. But there was an expectation that we were communicating with this community as often as we could, even with as little information as we had, and even when the information changed every day and often multiple times a day from the state and from the federal government. So I ask if we can consider, as a community, as a city, as an administration, as a council, opportunities to increase our communication, to treat this as a crisis as it is, to be okay with the fact that we don't have answers all the time, but if we can give the community some opportunities to understand what decisions are being made, when, you know, where are those pivot points, what things we don't know and what things we may know in the future, and what that timeline looks like. I think it'll go a long way, as Councilor Wilson said, to rebuilding some trust, but also to showing that this is an urgent crisis for this community and for the kids and the youth and the teachers and educators. Thanks.
Thank you. Just because Councilor Klingon hasn't spoken, yes, you have. Councilor Gomez-Mocad and Klingon.
I want to say something and be clear. I think Councilor Scott, responding back to you and very politely, I think that you're great with your words, but in this instance, once you responded, what you meant to say, and it would have been more helpful, and this is where I want to make sure we're clear. Oh my, don't make faces again. And the MSBA, what we're trying to say is there's a back and forth section in the MSBA that we want a shortcut. And that's very different than saying we want to abbreviate a study, because there's a lot of misunderstanding out there and screaming about studies. We don't need studies. Unfortunately, to get a building together, you need you need to understand what you're building. That's all I want to make clear, because again, there's a lot of misinformation. I also want to echo that I think we have two issues here. One is the communication of a relocation and the lack of trust in our buildings, which I've been speaking about for almost a decade now. And there's that, and then how do we proceed or accelerate in the most expeditious way I'm going to assume a new construction project right now. Again, I don't want to make the diagnosis already. And how do we expedite it? So I think that's our message, I hope, from the council here. And I do want to add, we are all to blame for this crisis right now. Our schools have not been in the priority list for us. We have plans for bike lanes, curbs, municipal buildings. We barely got an assessment of the Brown School in 2021, and we're about to get the Winter Hill. Why this happened, I don't know, but we're all guilty and responsible for this. We haven't advocated for our schools in a strong enough manner. And it is time, now we're realizing what it caused. I'm just besides myself because 40%, 60% of our students are students of color. They're students who are not financially stable. And the last thing we need, we already did, and our students are anxious and suffering through a lot of emotional, so we need to come together and say, how are we going to solve this and how are we going to communicate clearly? That's all I ask for, that's all I insist. And hello, it's mea culpa all around. I am the one who has the most orders, and this entire council has advocated for schools more than anybody. And I'm going to take blame. Because I walked through the Winter Hill and I saw like a wet area, and I should have spoken about it. And I will take blame. Because I'm not afraid to take blame and said, I did it wrong. I didn't speak up for you enough. And I encourage you to be strong enough, because during the COVID crisis, I saw this council talking about gyms, talking about hockey rinks, while our schools were freaking falling apart. And let me tell you, who were the two counselors who responded to my long, lengthy emails? Councilor Stresso and Councilor Ballantyne. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Klingon, then Wilson.
Mr. President, thank you. Just for colleagues' sake, just know that I'm going to, when it comes to my order, I'm just going to waive the reading and put it in. We're having a discussion now with the mayor here. That said, I feel like, we're getting in the weeds and all the different decisions that are probably these are the talks we're going to have in those, hopefully those community meetings. It becomes like a big word salad. I think that people at home are probably just listening, just wanting to see some definitive baby steps. I'm all about baby steps, and I feel like if baby steps, and I think we need a flow chart. If Director Raish could make a flow chart of how this moves forward from, if we could do this, then we go this way, take a left, we take a right. I think we need a flow chart, and I think we need to take baby steps. Baby step number one is make the decision to not reopen the building. I think that'll I'm with Councilor Kelly on this. I'm trying to be diplomatic about everything, but I think that really and truly, like, that's the message loud and clear. And so that's where I'm at. So thank you, and thank you. Yeah.
Councilor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief here. Councilor Klingon sort of alluded to the point I was going to make, and building on what Councilor Pena-Neufeld said. This process is a black box to a lot of people. There's a lot of different beliefs out there about how this works, and I think a really good step for right now, for this week or for next week, would be to get a really clear explanation of how it could work with the different paths that we're looking at here. There's talk of debt exclusion ballot measures, there's talk of MSBA, and an explanation of the different stages, how it works, typical timelines, and let people understand fully how this process works. I think that would really, really benefit the discussion and lead to a lot of people feeling a lot better about this.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. I'll just say, as a local politician, 95% of what we do, there's like a little tiny community that pays attention to it and knows our names and our faces and what we're talking about. Then every once in a while, something happens that touches normal people and just this is one of those things where people who have no idea who any of us are and honestly don't care, and why should they, their lives have just been turned upside down, and it's just on all of us to, as the team has been doing, to just put our heads down and get this done. I, for one, and I think I speak for lots of people, the sooner we can get this on a ballot for a debt exclusion for the Winter Hill and the Brown, whatever that plan is, I will be knocking hundreds and thousands of doors. I know that many of us will be, and you know, I think we've all made ourselves clear, right? This community needs to know what's going to happen at the end of August, and they need to know what is the timeline for the next step. Even if that is hard medicine, that's what people need. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of these issues will come up when we're discussing orders. Thank you all for being here. Why don't we take up the financial items related to this now? Councillor Wilson, do you want to call those off? The items that you have in mind?
These are the ones we're looking for immediate consideration tonight. Yeah, I believe 7.3, 7.5, and 7.16.
Thank you.
Item 7.3 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $103,382 as an amendment to the proposed fiscal year 2024 general fund budget for a senior project manager in the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management capital projects to support the K-8 master plan and Winter Hill Community Innovation School interim solutions. Item 7.16 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $1.3 million from free cash to the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund for a feasibility study to create new building space to accommodate the Benjamin Brown School, the Winter Hill Community Innovation School, and additional educational programs defined by the enrollment study. And item 7.5 is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $1.3 million from the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund for a feasibility study to create new building space to accommodate the Benjamin Brown School, the Winter Hill Community Innovation School, and additional educational programs defined by the enrollment study.
Excellent. I see that there's a huddle going on that might have to do with some details. Does anyone want to end their political career by speaking against these? No? Okay. Any questions? Councillor McLaughlin?
Mr. Chair, I mean, just so I can repeat back to people what this is all about, can you explain how this is going to most directly address all the concerns people have right now?
Director, yeah.
And actually, Mr. President, before you do this, the administration has pointed to, there's an item in finance right now that we'd also like to discharge and add to this. It's item 23-0933, late breaking here.
Okay. Clerk, did you get that?
Clerk, are you able to pull that up? Yep.
Just a moment, Director. And thank you, Councillor, for asking. I was joking. It is important that we understand exactly what these are, obviously.
I think I'm waiting for Kim to read an item.
Yeah.
Correct? Yes.
You are.
Is a request of the mayor requesting the appropriation of $7,796,452 from free cash to the Facility Renovation and Reconstruction Stabilization Fund to support the fiscal year 2023 five-year capital investment plan.
Okay, Director, do you want to walk us through these?
Yes,
so we can all explain
thank you,
to the
Mr.
public?
President, to the Ward 1 Councilor. The first item that was read is for a senior project manager. We actually discussed this in finance last night. This was a late supplemental item that, just because of the quirk of the calendar, hit this agenda after we discussed it in finance yesterday. But in response to this event and the fact that clearly we are going to accelerate our long-term planning to either renovate or likely build a new school, and that accelerated schedule will want a project manager on the city side to drive that schedule.
schedule, and also the fact that this became much more complicated because we now clearly have an interim solution to solve for. We, again, through a lot of work with the city and SPS, relocated every student today to a new safe location. Clearly, we need to have a quality location for them, which is possibly not the Winter Hill on August 30th. That will also be a effort led by Capital Projects to get that space ready and enable any other spaces that might happen for shifting around different buildings and different departments to enable that. Clearly, we've got additional workload in Capital Projects that we hadn't anticipated. So this senior project manager will pick that up, will be fully dedicated to this school, both the interim and long-term solution. The good news is that we are asking for that to be fully funded starting on July 1, because we have an internal candidate that we will slide into this role. We will then advertise that role, and we'll fill it when we get to fill it. But it's an excellent internal candidate, and this funding on the general fund budget proves a commitment to driving this project through completion. I'll pause on that item if there's any questions on that item before we go to the others.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chair, so this is new that was not originally in the budget and in direct response to the Winter Hill School?
Through the President, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, 7.5.
So then the next two really should be considered together because it is an appropriation from free cash into the facility stabilization, and then the appropriation out of facility stabilization into a fund that Capital Projects will be able to access. This is, as the mayor described, our intent to accelerate the feasibility study. All the great things that the Ward 5 councilor described, the due diligence we will need to do to build a building, rather than wait for invitation into the MSBA process. Usually once you're in the MSBA process, there is MSBA dollars that go to that feasibility study with a local match. We had anticipated coming for that local match at some point next year. We are not going to take our foot off of the gas, so to speak. We will roll right into the next phases of the feasibility study and self-fund that. And so this $1.3 million will allow us to do that as quickly as we can.
And Director, we spoke about this last night. There's kind of it's unfortunate that it's called a feasibility study because that really sounds like a bunch of people sitting around twiddling their thumbs. Can you, for normal people, explain what this study is?
Through the chair, I would just reference back to the record the litany of items that Councilor Gomez-Ricard enumerated, plus some additional specialized things for schools. There's a lot of specialized programming that goes into schools, and it's also further complicated in Somerville by a lot of our special programmatic needs. We have a lot of English language learners, so the square footage per student is different, per gen ed student is different, particularly with the Winter Hill, with the AIM program. There's a lot of very specific needs for that we need to work through in programming. And we have a lot of kids with IEPs within gen ed that get pulled out for 1 or 2 hours, and there are special spaces that we need to have. And so this all works through that and designs the building, masses the building, finds a location for the building, all those essential preliminary design efforts that then give us the outcome of this is essentially a preliminary design that we can attach a very good cost estimate to, and that then is what we bring the voters in the debt exclusion override. In order for us to go to that debt exclusion, we have to go to the voters in good conscience with a very good cost estimate of what they can expect to see on their tax bills in 2030 and 2040. And the outcome of this is that critical piece of information to proceed to the next steps.
Thank you. I mean, you know, for all of us just having a crash course in how this works, it was helpful for me to understand that the output of this is basically early stage designs, right, of buildings in specific locations with costs attached. It's not, yeah, we should build a school. Like, that's kind of, I think, what members of the public might think when they hear the words feasibility study.
If you want to give me $1.3 million to say, yeah, we got to build a school, I'll happily take it.
Counselor?
I do have a quick question in terms of clarifying the process. Are there any large, you know, I'm not familiar with schools. Are there any larger state permitting processes tied to it? Like, do we have to go through MIPA, anything like that in this?
Through the president, depending upon where we land, possibly, in terms of the site, there may be some additional state hurdles we need to surmount, but it's a little premature to speculate on that right now.
Thank you.
Councilor Strezzo?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Director Raish. Had a quick question. We just built that playground. Are there any thoughts, ideas, if with what could be the future of the new playground on Winter Hill School?
Yeah, through the president. I think that's one of the things that we look at as we go through the different options, the massing of the buildings, the locations of the buildings, the support you need for construction. You know, at this point, as difficult as it is, I think we have to, you know, be sort of just economic and ignore some costs and realize that that would then be an additional cost to rebuild afterwards. But it's, you know, those are the sorts of things that we look at during the feasibility study.
Councilor McLaughlin, then Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, just back to that staff position that might be filled by an internal candidate. I just want to say that I hope that that candidate isn't also doing the old job as well, because sometimes that happens where people get double, triple tapped. So if we can find a replacement for that as soon as possible, that'd be great. Through you to Rich, you mentioned 1.3 million. What was that number for?
Through the chair, that's for that unfortunately named feasibility study.
And that's what we're voting on tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure, because I was going to say, yes, can we give you 1.3 million? I'd love to give it to you.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Director Raish, could you just talk about the item that's on screen, the requesting the appropriation of $7.8 million from unreserved funds to the Facilities Renovation and Reconstruction Stabilization Fund? I think this question of what is going towards this Winter Hill crisis, if I'm an average resident, that says nothing to me. So hopefully somebody caught that question. Can you just break down what this item is referencing, what the funds will be used for?
Through the chair, I will humbly admit that I was not prepared to talk to this item tonight, and so I don't have any specifics off the top of my head, other than in general, this is an item to put money in the stabilization account to advance a number of different, well, that part, yeah. Yeah, so it's intended to fund a number of different things that we have in the capital investment plan, including upgrading the HVAC at other schools and a list. I don't have like all the specifics of what we were intending to use right off the bat on this, but in general, it's all capital improvement investments.
Right. So, you know, just for the public at home, because I know this is a meeting that is being watched. Tonight, we are moving free cash, unreserved fund balances to the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund, and then immediately appropriating it out for the feasibility study, right? So that's, step one is this. So I think for the public, it would be helpful to know what the step two is, because I can very clearly point to residents tonight and say, well, look, we moved this 1.3 million and now it's being used for the feasibility study. But looking at this 7.8 million without an itemized receipt, colloquially we can say.
Through the chair, that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't have the step two, other than the general list of stuff that we have. I don't have the stuff that all adds up to that right in front of me right now.
Can that come soon?
Sure.
Thank you.
Through the president.
Councilor Klingon?
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. But so when I see the number 7.8 million, that makes me a little nervous that that money is going to go towards fixing up the Winter Hill School over the summer. And again, that's signaling that as far as the commitment goes to closing the school and making that decision. This concerns me that is what's happening. This is an ask for money to fix the school.
Councilor, if I could, just on that, so my understanding is, having just been informed of this by the clerk, any actual spending requests come back to the council. This is to put the money in a place where it can then be requested to us. This is not like we're writing a $7.8 million check and saying, talk to you later.
And to the President, it could then also be, as we evolve this plan and interim locations, go into investments into the buildings where we're going to just, if we have to do something at the Edgerly to support it, we could come out of that stabilization fund and do something at the Edgerly. But I don't have that
free cash to stabilization.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for the clarification. I just thought that because the 1.3 million we are voting on tonight. Okay, so that's where I got confused. I thought they were taking that money out of this money. We were voting immediately on this. Okay,
it's totally reasonable. This is happening very quickly.
That's
there are
fine.
2 votes on the 1.3 million, right? There's moving it into the fund and then actually spending it. This part is just moving it into a stabilization fund.
Okay, thank you. Understood. Thank you for that clarification. Again, I just can't reiterate enough that the best signal to people that we are moving forward in the fastest way possible would be to just close the school for good. I think that'll put a lot of people at ease. Thank you.
Thank you. So of these requests, I believe one of them requires a roll call. Councilor Costa, do you want to speak?
Just to help maybe with the clarification, this $7.8 million into the stabilization from free cash is part of a standard routine set of sweeps that the city usually does at the same time on the end of budget night. So this is just committing that we are going to sweep that in there ahead of getting to the end of budget season.
Exactly. Thank you. So Madam Clerk, there's one roll call and the rest are voice votes, is that right?
Correct. The item before the council now is item 23-0977, which is the appropriation of $1.3 million from the Facility Renovation Stabilization Fund for the feasibility study. On that item, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Mulcad.
Absolutely, yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Excellent. And can we take up the other items together?
Yes, I was assuming you already did that. You actually would have had to in order to move
We did that.
that money. Yeah,
We did that and we approved them.
great.
No, we do that now. Councilor Davis? No. Okay. Thank you all. I think that brings us to the beginning of our agenda.
That does return us to the regular order of business.
Mr. President, I waive the I request to waive the readings of item number 1.1 and place it on file, and waive the reading of, I gotta look at the actual numbers here.
4.1.
4.1 and waive the reading of 4.2 and send that to the School Buildings Committee. Thank you.
Excellent. 4.1 is approved. 4.2 is referred to the Committee on School Buildings.
Item 4.3 is an order by Councilors Strezzo and McLaughlin that the Commissioner of Public Works remove or raise above human height the low-hanging wire in front of 11 Bon Air Street and report to this City Council who owns the pole.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Please check out my photography skills and the accompanying picture that goes along with this order. Please send this to committee. Thank you.
This item is referred to Public Utilities.
Item 4.4 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Communications and Community Engagement create a regularly updated public-facing website dedicated to the Winter Hill Community Innovation School Plan with links to publicly filed documents.
Thank you. This item and the following item are resolution. I'm asking that this, nope, I'm wrong, not the next one. So just this item. There's another one that, goes along with this. Okay, this and item 4.7, so I waive the reading on that to be sent to, both of them be sent to committee, and I want to say that these two items were brought forward by the PTA Council, and I am submitting these great ideas they have. Thank you. But
Thank
for
you.
them to go
Those
to committee.
items are sent to the Committee on School Buildings.
Thank you.
Item 4.5 is a resolution by Councilor Strezzo that the administration work with the Director of Housing and Director of Water and Sewer to provide an affordable, benevolent landlord and subsidized landlord housing water utility assessment of all low-income housing units where residents pay their own water and sewer bills.
Councilor Strezzo.
Water rates. I don't even want to get too deep into this at this very second, but this order is, or this resolution and the following is a resolution I'm asking both being sent to committee to discuss, because I am very concerned about the increase of water rates and how that's going to affect our low-income and moderate-income residents. Thank you.
Councilor, did you have a preferred committee? I'm happy to send it to Finance.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not, because they're action items for supplies. I know I wanted to hear your input on that, because they can go a couple of places.
I would say we've had extensive discussion in the Committee on Finance on water and sewer rate mitigation strategies that the administration is proposing, so that would be the most obvious place for them to go, but I know that you don't serve on that committee, so if you want them to go to a committee you serve on, that's fine as well. Just let me know.
Thank you. I'm happy to take it in housing and community development to try to
have a discussion there.
Yeah, we can have a discussion there. Thank you.
Of 7. Sorry. Councilor Strezzo, just to clarify, did you include 4.6 in what you just said?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Item 4.9 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management and the Commissioner of Public Works present to this City Council the building failures that took place in the Winter Hill Community Innovation School and a plan for assessing those failures.
Councilor?
Bring them all in one sequence and I can talk to this. This is just, for my own benefit, want to understand exactly what went wrong at the Winter Hill. Sorry, I don't have my microphone. I'm sitting here like I'm in my living room. And I just want to understand, because I suspect the issues related to water infiltration, and you're going to see a theme I have. So I want to understand what happened to make sure we're assessing across all buildings. So I put this in the school building committee. I've spoken enough.
Okay, that item is referred to the school building committee, and did you say you wanted to have all of your next items on this topic read?
Yeah, just read them and I'll just talk about them really.
I'd like to sign on to all of those.
Okay, Councilors Wilson and Klingon would like to sign on to all of those. And sure, why don't we read?
I would waive the reading and just explain the general gist, if that's okay, because it's a lot. It's
Certainly.
10 items.
Let's waive the readings of 410 to 418, and we'll refer those to the Committee on School Buildings. And please, the floor is yours.
Just a quick explanation where all these are coming from, other than incredible anxiety about our school buildings. But basically, we already have the permanent staff. I'm grateful for the senior project manager, but I'm trying to look at, we've had a lot of 4.4, 4.15, 4.16. Those items are tied to the fact that we keep on having this recurring building failures, and we need to ask ourselves why we're not addressing these, or we're not finding them. A long time ago, I wrote like a diatribe to the City Council saying we really needed a dedicated building superintendent. We needed someone dedicated to, Cambridge has a robust department of 70 people with custodians and everything. I don't think we can have something as robust, but we need someone who's really strictly looking at our school buildings, because we got to treat, I think there's hospitals and then there's school buildings. We go through these charades, like over and over of displacing students. It's causing trauma, deja vu. We're all getting extremely anxious. So I'm asking, do we need a person dedicated to our school buildings? And then I'm asking, do we need, you know, specific staff dedicated to overseeing our mechanical systems, our electric systems? I know we hire outside consultants, but we need someone inside, and this is where maybe Councilor Scott and I would agree. Look, we agree sometimes, you know? We need someone inside looking out on our behalf, really overseeing things. So that's my, and I also understand that a lot of times we're seeing leaks, and what I saw, for example, in the, at the Winter Hill, I saw some things that are, to me, not, I don't want to say anything, because I'm not a building expert, so I don't want to say anything and misinform people on my end. But sometimes you need experts to look at water infiltration issues because they cause larger problems. And then we need a method that we unfortunately have suffered great neglect. Our school buildings have been enormously neglected in many ways. You know, I run into a school teacher, the Healy roof is leaking, you know, and so we need to assess our buildings every 5 years and say, this is something we do at the hospital. We do an assessment and say, these things need to be repaired. And then something I really appreciate, I watch a lot, certain school districts, Chelsea does, it's not updated, but have a publication of all the repairs we're currently doing in our schools, because I don't know if you realize we're starting to work on the mechanical systems in some schools, doing assessments. It would be good to have a list so the public understands what's going on, and this is part of my, again, that transparency, because we've completely lost the trust of the public. That's it. Sorry, it was long and winded, but that's what it was. And then I do want to emphasize item 4.12. I want to make sure that any RFPs, any consultants that need to be brought on board, we're not delayed, because that's a, you know, again, Councilor Scott, you and I can agree on this. One of the processes that delays us sometimes is the procurement process. And I want to make sure, like, we're being very transparent, like, we're sending out those RFPs, because sometimes they have to go through contracts, we have to write them, and we're doing that in a timely manner. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
The next item is item 4.19, an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Engineering utilize the partial paving program to address streets in East Somerville that have private trench restoration to ensure half-paved streets are fully paved.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if your other neighborhoods have this issue, but we have a lot of half-paved roads on my side of town and in Ward 4. This is because of the National Grid Eversource divide. So Ward 1, Ward 4 is served by National Grid. The rest of the city is served by Eversource. There seems to be an issue about contracts and how each company paves or repaves the road. So someone comes in, digs up a trench, they only have to repave the side of the street that they did. So I have all these streets that are just half paved, and we have a restoration program to address this. I clearly think it should go to my neighborhood, not only because it's my neighborhood, but because it's the neighborhood that is being disproportionately impacted by this. I spoke to the city about this. They think that something can be done. I just want to make sure people in the neighborhood know that I'm not sleeping on these half-paved streets. They may be good enough to drive on, but they do not look good, and I would like to have fully paved streets. And if we can, build whatever the public utilities.
Very well. This item is referred to Public Utilities, and let me just say, for the record, this issue definitely affects Ward 3. I can't compare numbers, but no question, yes.
Item 4.20 is a resolution by Councilor McLaughlin that the Traffic Commission make Jasper Street a one-way street from Pearl Street to Gilman Street.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Traffic and parking, please.
This item is referred to Traffic and Parking.
Item 4.21 is an order by Councilor Burnley that this council send back the fiscal year 2024 budget until it incorporates the demands of residents, including funding for a new Winter Hill School, housing security, and unarmed alternative emergency response outside of the police department.
Councilor Burnley moves to lay that item on the table.
Item 4.22 is an order by Councilor Burnley that the Director of Parks and Recreation work with the Director of Human Resources to post flyers on community boards indicating vacant job positions.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is similar to an item I put forward last year regarding using our community boards as a means of transparency around the council's activities and posting the council schedule and whatnot, so that, you know, our members could actually see their government in action, for better or worse. This is a step forward on that, and just saying we have so many vacant jobs in this city, and I don't think it's for lack of trying on the part of our staff. But any way that we can use government as a bridge for economic opportunity for our residents, I think we should be pursuing, and allowing just everyday Somervillians to see, oh, there's a job opening as a crossing guard. There's a job opening as, you know, I have a degree in environmental science, don't know where to go. Oh, the city needs people with these skills. And it could be as simple as a one-pager in many languages that kind of just summarizes, we have vacant positions, please apply. I would just love to see people be connected to their government in a way that helps bolster their lives and also helps us get the work, the incredibly necessary work we need done in terms of city services. So I would actually, where should this go? Oh, this should go to open space. Thank you.
Excellent. That item is referred to open space. Councilor Klingon would like to sign on, and?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the good councilor at large. I think it's a great idea. I envision like maybe a QR code or something that takes people straight to a website. I don't know how easy it is to navigate our website as far as the vacant positions, but certainly I think it's, are we at 137 or 67 vacancies? It's a lot. So thank you for this, and I think it's a good use of the community boards.
Or it could even be like a van. It goes around. All right, that item is approved.
The next item is item 5.1, an order by Councilor Gomez-Mocad that the Director of Mobility and the Director of Engineering integrate traffic calming measures on Hudson and Summer Streets and plan for the work to be implemented prior to the start of the Highland Avenue improvement construction.
Councilor Gomez-Mocad.
So I've been approached by residents from Hudson for traffic calming and talking to them when and if the Highland Avenue construction starts. We hope it will. Hudson and Summer Street will become cut-throughs. And talking to Director Postlewood, he didn't think this was a bad idea that we do put some traffic calming on those streets prior to the start of Highland. It's all interconnected, so that's all it is.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to speak in support of this, both on these specific streets and elsewhere, and just sort of share the experience in Ward 6. I know it was mentioned last night in the committee meeting that these projects, they learned, the next one is informed by the last, and the College in Holland project was specifically noted. And, you know, for the most part, traffic calming on side streets and smaller streets happened after the College in Holland project sort of was for the most part implemented, and we've since been doing what one of my constituents characterized very aptly as whack-a-mole, with okay, now everyone's going down this street, put some speed humps on it, now everyone's going to, and you know, so not surprisingly, whichever street has yet to get the speed humps, that's where everyone's flying up and down. And so absolutely makes sense, and I've been talking to people about this for the last few weeks and months. Roll out the suppressing measures outside before you create the problem that will push traffic onto those streets. Absolute way to do it sequentially. So fully support for these specific streets and anywhere else where we can learn from our experience.
Thank you. I'll say, if you want to learn from the Ward 3, the Spring Hill project, just dig up all the other streets around Highland as well. Then you can't drive any of them. Councilor, did you want this to go to traffic and parking? Okay, this item is referred to traffic and parking.
Item 5.2 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Mocad that the Director of Mobility develop a strategy for the implementation of speed radar detectors on north-south cut-through streets throughout the city, including but not limited to Central Street and Cedar Street.
Councilor.
So I've gotten requests for speed radars and I know for Central and Cedar, and it occurs to me that there are some of these north-south cut-throughs that become, and that might not be in my ward. They're not preventers, but they're informative, and I figured I put a request not just for my ward, but I'm all about implementing consistently and having things be done for, so Lowell Street has it, but Central and Cedar don't have it. And it seems a little, again, random.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
I'll refer the good folks of the administration back to previous requests I've made for Kidder, another street with no traffic calming and where there has been requests for these types of signs as well. So thank you to the good council from Ward 5 for raising this, and I support this again on any streets around the city where these other projects are creating issues.
That item is referred to traffic and parking. Next item.
Shoot, sorry, not Kidder, Willow. I do that all the time. Willow's north-south, Kidder's east-west.
Item 5.3 is an order by Councilor Gomez-Milcad that the Director of Mobility, Director of Engineering, Director of Parking, and Commissioner of Public Works establish criteria and guidelines for council orders to be submitted for traffic calming and mobility-related issues and items that should be submitted to 311 to ensure the City Council is addressing larger mobility strategic planning issues.
Councilor.
So I notice in traffic and parking, sometimes we have issues, it's a sign, it's a push button, and it has never gone through 311. And I've noticed myself, I do this, I submit it to 311, I then follow up with a relative department, and if it doesn't get done, then I bring it into orders. And it's just a way, you know, every little, there are a lot of big issues. We just realized our school buildings, for example, like we should spend a little more time on that, not on putting something about a sign. So I would like to have a discussion. I would love to hear from my colleagues. I know we like to push for things. This is my observation of being now a year and a half on traffic and parking, and I want to be making sure the administration is addressing, we want Highland Ave, we're going to go implementing the bike network plan. They're bigger fish to fry out there, and that we're not dealing with the little tiny items. I just got 2 lights put up on Cedar Street. It was dark, and I explained very clearly in the 311, look, you have all these poles have lights, and this one don't, and they just got put up. It took about 2 months. It didn't happen overnight, but I'm trying to use 311 for the resource it might be. It also provides the administration data where they have failures. I just want to see us be a little more systematic. If my colleagues disagree, I won't bring this to traffic and parking, but that's my observation.
All right, that item is referred to traffic and parking.
Item 5.4 is an order by Councilor Wilson that the city solicitor appear in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to update this council on the status of collective bargaining negotiations with all municipal bargaining units.
Everyone wants to sign on. He submitted this at the last meeting. This has been on the table. Now, I've been working with the administration to schedule this. It's going to happen before the recess, but it's not going to happen tonight. I also neglected to mention that Councilor Pineda-Neufeld would like to sign on to the previous order from Councilor Gomez-Milcad. 5.3.
And we'll leave that 5.4 on the table.
Yes, please.
Item 6A is a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, meeting on May 31st, 2023.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
See how this goes. Thank you, Mr. President. Our committee met on May 31st. We had 4 members present. 1 was absent due to another committee conflict that evening. We took up 4 confirmations and 1 promotion. 3 of those 4 confirmations were to the Historic Preservation Commission, and 1 was to the Urban Forestry Committee. And then we took up a promotion to police sergeant. So let me tell you a little bit about some of the folks we talked to. The first confirmation we took up is the appointment of Daniel Coughlin to the Historic Preservation Commission. He lives in Somerville, obviously owns a condo here in a historic district, and has a background in commercial and residential architecture. And so went through and answered our questions with a lot of detail, and we noted just generally kind of his commitment to Somerville and to this particular commission. That was approved with all 4 members present unanimously. The second item is the appointment of Denise Price to the Historic Preservation Commission. She's a real estate broker and contractor here in Somerville, also lives in a historic district property, and has done actual work on historic properties around the city. And her appointment was approved unanimously with all 4 of the 5 members present on the committee. Then we took up the appointment of Colin Kersey to the Historic Preservation Commission, who has experience as a municipal employee and has been involved in real estate and environmental sustainability work. Also unanimously approved by 4 of the 5 members who were present. And then we took up the appointment of Doris Jenkins to the Urban Forestry Committee. Doris is a Massachusetts certified arborist and an engineer with experience in climate resiliency and green infrastructure. We had a really interesting conversation with this candidate about their background and work and how that would apply to this particular committee and what they would like to do in the committee. And that appointment was unanimously approved by the 4 or 5 members who were present. And then we took up the promotion of James Torres to the position of police sergeant. He had a long conversation with Officer Torres about his background, in particular some of his trainings and certifications that were on his resume, like crisis intervention, has a master's in criminal justice. He's received several awards, including 2 life-saving awards, and the chief talked about how respected he is by his peers. He's lived in Somerville for 14 years and raising his young family here in the city. And that promotion was approved, 3 yeses and 1 no, and 1 was absent. And then we adjourned at 7:35. So with that, I'd like the committee report to be accepted as submitted.
Thank you very much. On the report, Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. President, I want to thank the chair for contacting me ahead of the meeting, offering to ask questions on my behalf. I had to miss that meeting because it was the same exact time as the traffic and parking public hearing on the bicycle network plan. And it was, this is the first meeting I missed in a year and a half on the council. I despaired over it, but thanks to Councilor Pena Neufeld asking those questions, I was able to go back, watch the meeting. I felt like I was part of it. So thank you, Chair. Much appreciated.
That committee report is accepted.
Item 6B is a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, meeting on May 30th, 2023.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. We met May 30th and talked about the Democracy Collaborative's report on advancing community wealth building in the city of Somerville, which is a report that was done in 2021. And Ann Tate, resident, came and described the item, which outlines 5 pillars to advancing community wealth, a collaborative effort of child care worker cooperatives, anchor institutions, robust workforce ecosystem, local investment, and housing affordability. We had a conversation on that. We kept that in committee in the hope of bringing the actual researchers involved in this to the table to get into an even deeper conversation of how that could be implemented if chosen in Somerville. We talked about the Parks and Rec opening up Ginny Smithers Pool on Sundays, and we had Director Yerkes, who of Parks and Rec, to speak on this item, talking about well, we're having a little bit of a difficulty hiring lifeguards. We're all aware of this, that this is a regional problem, and that the will is there, but we have to figure that situation out too. And a couple of other items we talked about. You can check the minutes on that for the discussion, and I offer that these minutes be before you as to be approved.
Thank you, Councilor. Seeing no discussion, that committee report is approved.
Item 6C is a report of the Committee on Legislative Matters, meeting on May 30th, 2023.
Councilor Davis.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. President. The committee did meet for a brief meeting on the 30th of May. We took up 3 items. The minutes are relatively thorough. 2 items that were recommended for approval. One was a surveillance technology impact report for a type of camera that the fire department wants to use in their marine unit. So essentially, they said it could be used for navigation, but also for, it has thermal imaging, so if they're looking for missing persons or assessing a scene, emergency they would have to respond to while on the river. And so we discussed the disclosures. There's no data that's stored. It's a sort of real-time technology, and so that was approved. And then the other item, which councilors have before them, or physically in front of us, is a proposed amendment to the noise ordinance. And this was originally proposed by the good president. The primary function is to add sort of an extra category of really, really noisy construction stuff that, in addition to the current prohibitions, also cannot be used for after 5 o'clock on weekdays or on Saturdays. So. So we're talking about drilling rigs, blasting, heavy crushing machinery, jackhammers. As the good counselor from Ward, the good president noted, there are other communities that have these prohibitions in place. That was one of the initial impetus for this proposal. The administration did review and they were in agreement. However, they did make one request and proposed additional amendment, which was that among the things that could be considered when considering an exemption to this, so we're going to waive, we're going to say you can go ahead and do this for XYZ reasons. They wanted to add a new one which says that if the noise is related to construction operations on city capital projects for the advancement of the public good. So there was no objection to that within the committee. So that is the impact. And just to be clear, the construction noise prohibition as it existed previously still stands. This is an additional category of really noisy stuff that, in addition to the prohibited times under the ordinance currently, there's a more restrictive time period. There's additional times that this equipment can't be used. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to address them. But otherwise, it hopefully is relatively straightforward, to the extent that anything in our noise ordinance can be straightforward, because it's not the cleanest ordinance we have in this city. With that, Mr. President, I request that the report be accepted as submitted.
Thank you very much. On that item, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to quickly note that during discussion, one of the things that I wanted to make note of was that even with this change, the hours of operation during the weekdays are still pretty early from my perspective, and I hear from many residents who say, construction's happening outside my window. It's waking me up. It's messing up my sleep, et cetera, et cetera. I was very grateful to see the work that you put into this in terms of laying out what, a vast majority of municipalities that you could find their hours for around construction, both on the weekdays and weekend, and it is almost uniformly at the same time as ours in terms of 7 a.m., 7 p.m., with 2 notable exceptions, one of which was Salem, which, I've been to Salem 2 times. I'm no expert on Salem. They have some interesting things, but I'd be hard-pressed to say that it is a failing city because they push back their construction times an hour. And I want to think about and invite my colleagues to think about what it would mean for our city to do that as well. And also, if we can be in conversation with the folks who do that work to consider the implications there, just because I know for the folks who live near construction, it is quite troublesome. But we did not do anything on that on your item about that, but it is something I am thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And just on that topic, I obviously share the frustration that construction often starts early in the morning. And I'll just say, on specific construction projects that are before the planning board or the zoning board, it has often been possible for city councilors working together with communities in specific situations to have a condition put on that construction is even more restrictive for specific reasons, you know, relative to where they are. But yeah, ultimately I shared the calculation that that would probably not work as a citywide restriction for kind of just the realities. On this, I really want to thank, first of all, the many city staff who stepped up to help me really rapidly, the Inspectional Services Department, Inset Director Raish, and others, and the liaison staff. So thank you all very much. And to the committee, this is not the first time that kind of I've had an idea, and then it's gone to committee, and extremely quickly it's been improved and passed. So I'm really, really thankful for the work. You know, I really appreciate it, and I'm just always kind of amazed at the efficiency of that committee. So thank you, Councilor Davis, and members of the committee. And with that, the committee report is accepted. Councilor, no.
Oh, I had a quick question. I don't have the full ordinance. Do we define what is noise disturbance anywhere?
Mr. President.
Councilor Davis.
It just so happens that I have the noise ordinance before me for a completely unrelated reason. In fact, we do. In the definitions chapter, which is 9-115, noise disturbance shall mean, and it's there, I can read it if the good counselor would care.
Okay,
it's articulate. So it lists five things: causing temporary or permanent hearing loss, injures to public health, causes a nuisance, is defined as a noise disturbance pursuant to the chapter, so we can say this is, there's no interpretation, this is, or which either annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within the limits of the city. So it is, as your ears might be hearing, a relatively malleable definition.
No, again, as someone who works in construction, noise disturbance for you, me, it's different for different people, and respectfully so. We all have different sensitivities, so, okay.
Excellent. So the committee report is approved, and I think that puts the item before us.
It does indeed, Mr. President. That puts item 23-0607 before the council for enrollment and ordainment. As I switch my screen back for the folks watching. On item 23, enrollment of item 23-0607, amendments to section 9-116 of the Code of Ordinances, the noise ordinance. Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad. Yes. Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes. Was that a noise joke? Okay.
With all councilors in favor, that item is enrolled. On ordainment, Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
Yes.
Councilor Kelly.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is ordained. It's not even that late yet, guys.
That got 12 votes, one from Baby Isaac. All right.
The next item is item 6D, a report of the Committee on Traffic and Parking, meeting on May 31st, 2023.
Councilor Gomez-Molcad.
So we met on Wednesday, May 31st, just right before budget season, to have a public hearing on the bike network plan. Thanks to Councilor Ewan-Campen for reminding me that we needed to do this. We had a lot of support, folks wanting to have this be faster. When don't we want construction to happen faster? We had folks who felt they were not properly informed. We had folks who felt like we're advocating for a minority, not overseeing, the majority. We did have, Councilor Davis, a lot of people from Willow having some concerns. I urged them for them to meet with you. And I think that was about it. And I simply want to say our roads, if you look at our urban history, our roads have been changing for over 100 years, from streetcar suburbs to Route 28 to 93, and this is yet another change. And my little side comment, coming from Puerto Rico, has more cars per square mile per road than anywhere in the world, or at one moment had that lovely record. It can destroy the urban fabric, so I am glad this is here, and let's work together on it. Thank you, and please accept the notes, and I urge everyone to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Can you remind me, it's just escaping my memory, we kept the public comment period open. Do you recall the date?
I gave it 2 weeks.
Okay, so that is tomorrow, the clerk informs me.
Thank you.
So everyone, get to type in. If you have additional public comments for us, we've received a number in writing as well.
Tomorrow at noon, if you wanted to say it. Councilor Burnley.
The public hearing comment, the public comment period officially closes tomorrow at noon. It goes without saying, we will read emails that come in at any time, but that is the official public comment period. Councilor Wilson?
We're all done with that?
Oh, no, sorry, Councilor Burnley.
No.
Thank you for indulging me, Chair. Just wanted to really briefly make note, because there are members of the community who spoke during the public hearing asking this question, and there have been people since who've emailed the council to ask, like, are we going to pass an ordinance to actually implement this thing, to expedite it, to put some standards in place, et cetera? And I just want to be clear that we are working on it. I have the fabulous help of our legislative analysts. And I would say it is between 80 to 90% done, and the language is almost entirely drafted. The only reason I have not submitted it is because I am trying to do my due diligence and work with probably at least 5 different department heads to make sure that we are putting something in place that is technically feasible and legally viable, because we have a motto in Cambridge, but I like to do better than what Cambridge does, so I tried to add in more things, and that's just making it take a little bit longer, but we are almost there. If it wasn't budget season, this would be done by now, but it is, and we all have to suffer the same. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. That item is approved. The committee report.
Mr. President, could I move
Wilson.
to waive some readings here of some items? The clerk has these, so I'm just going to go through them quickly. 7-1, 7-2, 7-4, 7-6 to 7-15, 7-17 to 7-35, 10-2, and 10-14. I ask those be sent to Finance. Thanks.
Those items are referred to Finance.
The next item before the council will be item 7.36, a mayor's communication conveying the appointment of Kevin Dickinson, Thomas Gorman, James Marquez, Ellen Sullivan, and Jody Vachon to the Veterans Commission.
That item is placed on file.
Item 9.1 is a public communication from NRL WSC 200 Innerbelt Prop LLC requesting a zoning map amendment to change the zoning district of 200 Innerbelt Road from commercial industry to high-rise.
That item is referred to the Land Use Committee with a copy to the Planning Board.
Item 9.2 is a public communication from Green Cab conveying a change of address pursuant to the Code of Ordinances, Section 13-47.
Thank you, Green Cab, for letting us know. That item is placed on file.
Item 9.3.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Back to our regularly scheduled programming, I would like to waive the readings of items 9.3 to 9.25, as well as 10.7 and 10.8. And just note for the public that we have a slew of wonderful events coming your way, including multiple block parties, including one on Harrison Street in 2 days from 1 to 4 p.m. We also have the East Somerville Festival Series, which is coming very quickly. July 23rd is the first day that you will see businesses, food. I did read the word alcohol on the streets of Broadway. I think it's Broadway. And we also have Somerville Homeless Coalition's 28th annual 5K coming up pretty soon, so that's a wonderful contribution to this community as well. And in about 4 days, 4 days exactly, we do have a Juneteenth flag raising at City Hall. I will note on a personal note, this is a holiday that is very important to me. It is one of the few non-co-opted African-American holidays. Memorial Day was originally a black holiday. It is now an American holiday. That's good in some ways. It is also, when we lose pieces of our history and our understandings of where things come from, I feel a bit saddened by that. In that same vein, I will note, none of the black electeds were invited to speak at this event. That is concerning to me, but nevertheless, we persist. So with all that being said, I would like to move to approve all of those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor, would you like to add 10.5 and 10.6?
I guess, yes, please. I would like to waive the readings of those and then approve them.
Thank you.
All right, including those 2 items, those items are approved.
The next item will be item 9.26, a public communication from 23 residents submitting comments regarding item 23-0585, the citywide bicycle network plan.
So that item is placed on file with a copy to traffic and parking.
Item 10.3 is a request of the mayor requesting confirmation of the promotion of David Farino to fire lieutenant.
That is referred to the Confirmation of Appointments Committee.
Item 10.9 is a public communication from David Enos requesting the adoption of an amendment to the zoning ordinance map to change the zoning district of 0 White Street Place from MR4 to UR and 14 White Street Place from NR to UR.
That item is referred to land use with a copy to the planning board.
Item 10.10 is a public communication from 2 residents submitting comments regarding item 23-0635, a zoning text amendment to permit variations to build out regulations by special permit in the CC5 district USQ sub area.
That item is placed on file with a copy to land use.
Item 10.11 is a public communication from 8 residents submitting comments regarding item 23-0585, the citywide bicycle network plan.
That item is placed on file with a copy to traffic and parking.
Item 10.12 is a communication by Councillor McLaughlin conveying information related to naloxone administration.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. The hour is not too late, so I got a story to tell. No, I do have a story. It's actually a very serious story and one that has impacted my life dramatically. When I first got on the City Council 2014, one of the first orders I ever introduced was requesting that the firefighters and police carry Narcan or Naxaline, which is a life-saving medicine which revives people from overdoses. It's a real miracle drug. That Somerville was one of the first cities in the Commonwealth to actually have their first responders carry this. And it wasn't an easy fight. The fire department accepted it, but the police department at the time was in union negotiations. They did not want to accept this as a part of what they do until the contract was negotiated. There was a union president who's no longer here, which is a very positive thing for the city. And it was very difficult at that time to deal with that. And I remember I had a friend who overdosed in his home, and a firefighter that I knew came and revived this person. And when they got there were 2 police officers standing over this person because they had no Narcan. They had no ability to administer Narcan to save this person's life. And in a matter of seconds, the seconds really matter. And I went and I talked to the mayor about this, and within a week he said, "You're carrying Narcan and you can sue us and we'll deal with that later." And that was one of the proudest accomplishments of my life. One of the things that still hasn't gotten any better than that, actually. Hopefully we'll find something else, but that was a huge moment for me, knowing that people's lives were going to be saved from this. So this is in relation to like the present conversation. I consider that a reform. That was police reform to me. And I feel now we don't talk about reform as much these days. We talk about other things to address policing in the city. And some people go so far as to to say reform does not work. And that hurts me on a personal level, knowing that my reform actually saved people's lives. So I'm bringing all this up, and the communication is in relation to the amount of overdoses that have been prevented or lives saved from police administering Narcan. Because when we talked about the CORE program last week when the budget was introduced, there was a comment made about you don't want police to be the first person to show up to deal with these issues. And I absolutely understand that perspective. But the one thing we should understand is, and I think that the city actually misrepresented the information, probably unintentionally, is when the CORE program gets involved, the police are not the first people who are contacted. 911 is the first group that's contacted. So an overdose happens, 911 is called, police, fire, EMT all respond, and whoever shows up first is the one who's now capable of administering Narcan. So it's not that they're calling the police directly, they're calling all first responders to address this. And from my perspective, from someone who's lost so many friends that I can't even count anymore, I want the first person available to show up. I don't care if it's a cop or a social worker or a firefighter or EMT. I want that person there administering Narcan and making sure that this person's life is saved. And then I want someone from the city, regardless of what department it's in, to show up and say, hey, you almost died. Can we help you? Can we make sure you don't go to jail? Can we give you a job? Can we help you get into rehab? That's the CORE program to me. And I know it's not everything. It's not what everyone's talking about it all the time, but it is something very positive and very good. So I just wanted to let people know this. You know, in the past year, February 22 to the presently, well, this is July 1st to February 28th, 23. 99 suspected overdoses, 50 Narcan was administered. Does not, and it's only opiate related. So there were many, many other overdoses that aren't even categorized in this. And then before that, 100 overdoses. There's an overdose a week in this city, easily. Every week, someone, whether police, fire, EMT, is administering Narcan to save someone's life. So I'm just bringing this up so when we have this discussion, when the budget comes up, I'm very proud to know that the CORE program's getting 2 more workers to address a very proven and current need. And I just want my colleagues to think about this when we discuss the CORE program. I know it's not everything that everyone wants, but it's one thing that I really want, and I'm very proud to know that it saves people's lives.
Thank you, Councilor. Did you want this to go to committee?
No, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to share the information with people. You can look it up on a Minute Track or whatever we're using these days.
Excellent. That item is placed on file. Thank you.
And the next item is item 10.13, a communication by Councilor Wilson and Councilor McLaughlin inviting the community to Carnival in East Somerville on Sunday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Carnival! All right, getting back to the positive things. Sorry, I have huge swings of emotion, as you know. I just want to invite everybody to Carnival this Sunday. It's going to be a good time, 2 to 4 p.m. A lot of us are going to be in the dunk tank. I'll see you all there. And thank you, Councilor Wilson, for bringing this up.
Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to taunt the community of Somerville and say, I do not think that you can successfully dunk any of us. Come prove us wrong for a good cause.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just want to directly address the children of Somerville. You got nothing. Come give it a shot, but, you know.
Mr. President, are adults allowed to dunk tank you all? Is that an option?
I don't think there's a single adult in the city of Somerville that could possibly dunk any of us.
All right.
I mean, they can try, but.
I'm not going in the tank, but I'm putting one of you in it.
That item is approved.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening, Mr. President.
Mr. President?
Councilor Scott?
Could I know it flew past pretty quick there. The disposition of 9.2, is that just placed on file?
Sorry. That was placed on file. Go ahead.
All right. Just on that item, I would encourage all of my colleagues to actually read that letter. Green Cab is our local cab company, family-owned business, has been here for a very long time and has not only endured through Uber and Lyft and modernized, and they have a lovely app, but they've been a Ward 2 presence for as long as I can recall. And unfortunately, while they could survive Uber and Lyft in the gig share economy, they cannot survive displacement from major real estate developers. So I just wanted to bring folks' attention to that letter, and hopefully they'll give it a read. Thanks.
Mr. President, through you, I just want to say I was always more of a yellow cab man myself. No, I'm kidding. It's the same company. Same company, but I will say that it was in Ward 1 and it was displaced once already due to Assembly Row being built, so it's tough.
Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just really quickly, I want to urge everyone to take green and yellow cab. It is better than rideshare, and it is still a local company, even if they've moved across the city line to Medford.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening, Mr. President.
Are there any late items?
There are no further items before the council.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.